I'm back. I'm back in the saddle of my pony in this here goat rodeo that is Breaking Change. My clock says that it's 8:40 a.m. Saturday, June 8th. My body thinks it's closer to 9:40 p.m. because jet lag. This is version 13 of the program. Broke some shit. I didn't break it. Things were broken. And so therefore a major version release was necessary. Just to recap the basic premise of the show, my name is Justin Searles. I have things that are on my chest that I would prefer be off the, not only off my chest, but just out of the room, through tubes into the cloud, just like, kind of like a, if you have ever lived in a community with tracks, and there's the right side of the tracks and the wrong side of the tracks, and on the wrong side there is a factory or something that's just spewing stinky, toxic, heavy metal, plumes. That is the image that I have when I tilt my head up towards my studio microphone. It's like Green Mile when the guy on death row. I realize this is a 3.5 hour long movie that a lot of you didn't see, but anyway, I think he's called a sin eater, and he just eats up everyone's sin or something. I don't know if it's like the Christian definition of sin or some sort of Creole thing. I really don't remember. I think I wasn't really paying attention because it was almost 4 hours long, but anyway, he spews the sin out, and it's just all these locusts and black kind of, tarry shit all over the place. And so that's the business that I'm in. And that's the kind of program this is. And so you are here of your own volition. You have opted in to wafting the fragrant but possibly toxic smell of my exhaust. I realize that's a crude analogy, but some percentage of people, and I admit I'm one of those percentage of people, the only reason that I like boating or motorsport activities is because I kind of like the smell of gasoline burning, even though I know it's bad for me, even though it makes me lightheaded. It kind of smells good. And I've only ever drank gasoline the one time, because I was trying in college to siphon, not to steal it, but my car was on empty and I had very few options. I was in the middle of nowhere. So I was like, okay, so it says on the instructions, stick it in this tank and then suck. And then, nothing happens, and then you suck a little harder. And then everything happens, and now you're just, you're covered in gasoline, and gasoline's in your mouth, and you're coughing because it's such a noxious, caustic liquid / fluid, right, with the gas components, and then so you cough and you swallow it, and now you're like, am I gonna die? I hope so. All right, so internally in the program, I keep a time to Justin brings up mortality, and this one here we are at just 4.5 minutes or so, and glad to get that out of the way. So yeah, this is version 13, WWDC Spoilers. That's what broke. We're going to talk about, normally we talk about rumors before Apple events. If you're not familiar with WWDC, it is the Worldwide Developers Conference, which is a kind of pretentious name, given that it's a very Apple single vendor specific. It is worldwide in the sense that this podcast is a worldwide podcast, because nowadays they just put it on YouTube. This podcast also on YouTube. So, we're kind of, competitors. I think of us as co-opetition, Apple and I. So yeah, they have an annual event every June. sometimes they announce hardware, sometimes they announce, new operating. Well, they always announce new operating system features, new platforms, even like last year with Vision Pro and Vision OS. But the idea in theory is that it's a developer conference, so they're going to show new APIs and new frameworks for developers. But increasingly, as Apple has wanted to have a bipolar sort of iron grasp over their PR and their media strategy, where they have, kind of June and September as the major kind of like polls, June for kind of previewing the software side, September for the most important hardware announcements, and then sort of March as this third leg of the stool for when they do have other stuff to share. Like in this case, this past year, they had a March event, I think, planned that got pushed to April to announce the new iPad Pro. So yeah, that's WWDC is happening Monday. And normally we talk about rumors, but Mark Gurman, and we'll talk about this later on in the program, he just kind of like he gave out a laundry list of here's everything you're going to see, almost like he was handed a script or a readout of a rehearsal. So we're just going to read about what's in WWDC, I guess, and try to speculate like what some of the stuff that's ambiguous means. So anyway, I as soon as I saw that last night, I was like, you know what? I got to get up. Saturday morning. I'm going to go for my run. And because, when I go to a restaurant, I want my food served the second it's ready. If I'm at a restaurant and they put my food on like one of those warming lamps, there's two reasons why a restaurant won't serve you the food the minute it's ready. One is that the kitchen style or the service that they run presumes that your server, which, as the name implies, the person who is attending to you and your desires is the one who should also be responsible for bringing the food to you. And from a customer service perspective, there's a certain continuity there that is appealing, because if you order fried pickles and fried gator chunks come out, the server might actually catch the error mid-flight and resolve it without having to, upset the customer, as may have happened to me at Gator's Dockside, a place that I go to for wings, but that also does sell fried gator. Now, the inefficiency there is that the server has multiple tables and your food might be finished before the server comes around. Another reason why your food might sit on a heat lamp is that there is this cultural tradition in America, maybe the West generally, I don't know, of waiting until everyone's food is ready, until any of it is delivered to the table. And that's, I think, because many children would be upset if somebody else got to eat food before they got to eat food. And there are a lot of middle-aged and elderly children in America. And so it would, from a customer satisfaction perspective, it is safer to wait until, the slow cooked, lamb shank is done, even if it means, your wood-fired pizza has been sitting for 45 minutes, to bring those out simultaneously. And that's just, or, if they do have to deliver, your dishes in kind of two shifts, because people only have so many hands, they'll typically, the tradition, the cultural element, the reason why I feel like this is a culture thing is like a lot of people will wait until everyone has been served until they deign to touch a utensil or even look at their food too closely. This is absolute nonsense. This is totally, it's unkind. It's just unpatriotic. Like, this is a land of the free, I thought. And nothing is more free than ordering some fried fucking food and then having it as directly as possible go out of the fry basket and down your gullet. I want it to be so hot that I can't feel anymore. And so when I'm served lukewarm French fries, say, at a restaurant, I will very politely say, this is not what I was going for. And so when possible, I will try to explain, hey, look, just deliver this food as it comes. We don't care that everyone eats at the same time. And if I'm with somebody who does care about that, I will say the same thing and disregard their feelings because they're wrong. Every time I come back from Japan, there is a literal 2 to 3 month crossfade from a food and dining experience perspective. Because in Japan, like, food is served dangerously hot. If you can make, if I don't know, if you're cooking fish beside a hearth and you're bringing it up to 120 degrees, or searing something, you will be handed that seared food even if it's scalding, and it's not burning your palate is left as an exercise to the diner. And it's your liability, really, if you be a dummy and you just, scald yourself. Whereas I think the America is so litigious that, we've got, signs and everything, and people have to say, hey, be careful, the plate is hot. They're all afraid of getting sued. So and that's why our food isn't so hot. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. Jet lag. I might be a little bit scatterbrained today just because I think that I've negotiated the jet lag very well. So it's a 13-hour time change where Japan is 13 hours ahead of Eastern time right now. During standard time, the 4 months a year or whatever, where we're not in daylight savings time, I think it's 14 hours ahead. And when, it's close enough to 12 that you can kind of just sort of mentally inverse, when you're communicating across the sea. But for all practical intents and purposes, like, it makes jet lag something you have to plan around. And on my way home, I didn't have a great opportunity to plan my sleep in advance to start to kind of, make some headway, to do some of that work in advance of returning. I went to bed very early relative to what I'd been used to on my last night. And I was all set, and I timed my, alarm so that I'd be getting up at the right time. I'm pretty, I wouldn't say scientific, but I'm very intentional about, my whole jet lag routine. I do, and I think I do really well, all things considered. But then that morning there was an earthquake. I was in Kawasaki in Kanagawa near Tokyo. There was an earthquake in Ishikawa in near Kanazawa, so way to the west and north. Not close. Every phone in Tokyo and many other parts of the country blares the go for safety. There's a earthquake, freak the fuck out at 6:31 a.m. And that was fucking shitty because, I'm squinting. I'm tired. I look at it and I'm just old enough now that, like, it takes a few solid minutes after I wake up for my vision to be able to read screens clearly. And so I'm squinting and I'm making out the kanji. I'm like, okay, this isn't the freak the fuck out and find shelter warning. This is the heads up, FYI, there's an earthquake warning. And we got a lot of these in 2019 when whichever of the Kim Jons over in the bad Korea was, like, launching a bunch of, like, podunk missile things, and all of them missed. But nevertheless, the whole country would get a, like, yo, there's a missile maybe, which was a super helpful and actionable announcement, often at all weird times of day. So that one screwed up my whole game plan. It turned out that, of course, it was just funny because it was so early, and I turned on the TV, and of course the TV person's basically just reading their phone to you because it's like local news. They don't have anything special. I opened up the window and I saw while it's blaring, I saw all the cars pull over. I saw like a whole bunch of people running to get off of the pedestrian overpass because it was probably fall over easily, and everyone freaking out. And then within as quickly 20 seconds, everyone was like, ah, yes, fuck this. And then they just completely went back around their business. It's bizarre. It's like hurry up and wait. You know that expression where you're like rushing and only to get into a line and then you're just full stop. It's like freak the fuck out and chill. Because, and apparently people have been habituated to it. It's like, oh, gotta freak the fuck. Oh, no. All right, let's just have some breakfast. Toast ready, honey? All right, great. So yeah, I augmented my plan. My plan was to have like 3 highballs, whiskey and soda water at the Delta Lounge before my flight. But then because I didn't get enough sleep, I turned that into 6 highballs, which was probably one too many. In fact, I had a fun chat at the bar with the bartenders because that lounge up until recently had all you couldn't drink Yamazaki whiskey, not the aged, but just like the normal Yamazaki whiskey. But that goes for, I don't know, $150, $200 a bottle typically. And you could just drink as much as you wanted at a lot. It was a great deal. And I remember the 3 prior times I've been, there's a new lounge in Haneda. It's a beautiful, it's one of their flagship lounges. So maybe the whiskey was a loss leader. I would always talk to the bartender. He's like, this can't last forever. And they're like, no, this can't last forever. And when I showed up this time, it had not lasted forever. So I had 6 Hakushu, another Suntory brand whiskey highballs. And I remained conscious just long enough to get into my chair and to tell the flight attendant that I was soon to be unconscious and that I would not be eating the meal service. That's another big part of my jet lag strategy is I fast on the plane, never eat on the plane. While I'm in transit, I don't eat. I sleep on whichever half of the flight is more appropriate for me to be sleeping in my target destination. So that was the first half here because it was like 4 p.m. 3 p.m. I boarded. So I was like, okay, so that's like 2 a.m. at home. So I slept for 6 or 7 hours, the equivalent to like 8 or 9 a.m. in America time. And by America time, of course, I mean the eastern better half of America. And sorry, I'm coming out with some opinions today. If they're making you feel things, either write into podcast@searls.co or start a podcast. And maybe we can do collabs. So I slept on the first half, and the second half I just tried to, rework a little. And then after landing, I wait to eat until the first typical meal time, as if to train my stomach like, yes, I'm eating a dinner. It is roughly dinner time. And just those 3 things of being mindful about sleep, fasting on the plane, and then breaking fast at the first normal meal time after you've arrived at your destination. That's pretty much all I need to, so far in my experience over the last decade, guarantee that you're not going to have more than a 48-hour jet lag of like real kind of all over the place. And so, yeah, I joked about being super jet lagged, but last 2 days, really, I've been fine. I don't stay up as late, and that's kind of good. And I get up a little earlier, but that's probably good. Honestly, the bigger problem coming back to the States for me, I've never experienced culture shock. People talk about culture shock. You go to another country, everything's really different. You're like, whoa, this is shocking. The culture, I assume. And I've read, what do you call it? Perspectives, testimony. No. So I've read people talk about culture shock experiences. I've been with people who were experiencing it. Seemed real rough, but I don't really know what it is because at least when I go to Japan, I'm like, I am shocked how nice this culture is. Everyone seems healthy, orderly, kind, stays out of your way, doesn't disrupt other people. Everything's very clean. Air quality is awesome. Everything seems pretty beautiful, Uh, uh, all I've ever experienced is reverse culture shock. I come back to America. People are, kids are super misbehaved. People are eating messy, stinky food in public and walking, littering everywhere. Everyone's talking super loud. The one thing that I just couldn't get over was I was at another Delta lounge. If you're one of these like lounge flies like me, who's been just using like kind of rewards credit cards for so long that you're always expecting like, oh, I am entitled to free food and alcohol and a mildly comfortable chair, at least one with a charging port at every airport. You start to conceptualize airports as which lounges are there and where are the lounges relative to the gates. So going from lounge to lounge, and this time in Minneapolis, I sat down and there was it was what, 2, 3, 4 p.m. on a weekday. And there were just so many business people businessing real hard. And they all had one AirPod in, and they were all talking at that AirPod as if they were screaming at somebody in front of them about like, okay, yeah, we'll circle back and I'll reach out later. Feel free to, put something on my calendar. And I'm like, they were all in meetings, not looking at anything and not really being fully present while trying to also gorge as much free food as they could. I assume just like, jockeying the mute toggle in between bites. And they were all businessing super hard. And it really made me realize like, man, I went to like a month plus in Japan. I saw like 3 people on phone calls and all of them were polite enough to like, like use the main handset, go off to a corner, get out of the way, have the call. In fact, little booths have become pretty common for people to, check into, like a phone booth, except nothing in it, just soundproofing. And I was like, man, like I am unsure that this much telephony is actually productive. I think a lot of it in US business is theatrical, or systemically our businesses way too much rely on just-in-time approval and consensus activities that there's just no way that that's the best way to do business. Like that's my opinion. All I can say is like it felt really weird getting screamed at in a cacophony of people talking through you as you tried to get some salad. Oh yeah, fiber. Rule number 4, fiber. Boy. While we're on the topic of productivity and what that means, I've learned it's a lot easier to get shit done when you're not moving to different city every day. I've observed this before, but when I was, quote unquote backpacking through a series of luxury business hotels that cost $70 a night, you fall into a routine pretty quickly. Because if you're going to change a city every day, there's certain things you got to do. You got, of course, at the very basic level, you got checkout, check-in, transit. And those all have to happen, checkout has to happen by 11, transit has to happen, check-in has to happen. Sometimes there's like a time limit on check-in in Japan. Less so these days. Like if you don't check in by like 10 p.m., the door's locked and you're just like fucked. Less so these days, but I prefer to check in early so that I can drop my bag and know that that's all squared away. I'm not carrying it all day long. So the middle part of the day is kind of devoted to that. I work out every day. So that means I either have to start my day with a run or find an Anytime Fitness where I can badge in. So that's another kind of daily chore. For me, I travel with 2 changes of clothes. So that means every 3rd day at least I need to do laundry. But if I'm changing cities every day and I'm also exercising every day, my exercise clothes are pretty skunky. And I prefer not to use I'm realizing this is quickly becoming one of those Mensa puzzles where it's like, a turtle and a fox and a crow and 8 school children are trying to get across a river. And the crow can go with Mary, but it can't go with Steve. But only people with even numbered ages can travel together. I hated those puzzles, for fuck's sake. Anyway, doing laundry, the workout, check out, check in, transit. Then, of course, there's like see shit in the city. There's get your train ticket or however, arrange the travel. There's, maybe if I'm going to be seeing somebody in the next city, I got to buy omiyage or traditional souvenir food packaged, like of whatever the meibutsu. There, word of the day, meibutsu. So last version, it was meiwaku, which is like a hindrance, nuisance person. Meibutsu, totally different. It means famous thing. So every city in Japan, big or small, has one or more meibutsu. And a meibutsu could be, in Aomori their meibutsu by far is apples. Everyone knows them for their apples. Sometimes it's not necessarily food, but it's often food. And sometimes it's like, a cooked prepared dish. Sometimes it's like an ingredient. Sometimes it's a confection. And of course, the confections and the fruits lend themselves more to a souvenir stand where you can just buy a box of I bought some apple pies because I was going from Aomori to Kawasaki via Morioka. And I had friends in Kawasaki that I was planning on meeting up with. And so I bought some a box of souvenir apple pies that seemed very nice for them. So that when I came to them, I would effectively be saying, hey, this is not much. I got to go on a trip, you didn't and whatnot. So this isn't much, but here's just a small token. In my sense of omiyage, kind of like the gift giving culture, is that it's a form of reciprocity where what you receive as the traveler is that the coworker or family member or friend or neighbor, they held down the fort for you while you were gone. And so that's what you received as the traveler. And so the least you can do is get them some tchotchke, a memento, a flavor of the place that you went. So omiyage is a huge pain in the ass. And so if you got to do that, that's a whole nother chore. Although they make it easy because it's usually sold at train stations or at transit hubs. And it's even more easily in Japan, whereas in America, we often ask, hey, what's the best thing? Hey, what's the best thing on your menu? Hey, what's this? Give me a recommendation for what do you personally like the most? More individual kind of angle. In Japan, typically, they just want to know, what's the most popular thing? What do most people do? Basically, what can I get that would minimize the likelihood that I fucked up by picking this thing? And so whenever you're scanning an omiyage stand, you're going to want to look for Ninki or popularity, number 1, number 2, number 3. It's probably even written out NO1, NO2, NO3. Yeah. So I've when you're in a habit of just kind of changing cities every day, I would always just look for, scan for where's number 1 or number 2 omiyage. Oh, here it's these soba noodles in this town. Okay, great. And pick them up and walk out, and pay. So yeah, when you have that sort of routine every day, that many hours or that many tasks that just kind of have to happen on a certain cadence, you fall into, it just becomes really difficult to do meaningful creative work that's going to take a couple hours because there's so many time constraints. You're up against the clock. Hey, I got to leave here by this time and do the next thing. And so I really didn't get very much work done at all. I was able to shit out some content. We might talk about a little bit of that. But I wasn't able to really code seriously. And when I tried, it would take 3 days to do one small thing and I'd get frustrated or I'd have to, reload context each day. And yeah. So ultimately I brought the Vision Pro with me and I don't think I would do that again. It's nice on a plane to watch some shows. I mean, if you're going to be gone for a weekend, then that's a larger proportion of your overall trip where the Vision Pro would be useful, even if all you use it for is to be on the plane, to drown out the humans and make it feel like you're not in a tiny little chair. But for a month plus, it was way more of a hassle. The weight was too much. I had a whole spare battery just because the Vision Pro passively drains its battery surprisingly quickly. And so I got in the habit of disconnecting its battery, which turns off the product, which requires a reboot, which makes it even less likely you're going to feel like booting the thing up again. So I had this battery that was like, a very heavy brick as well. I upsized to the next larger Tom bin bag, and everything was kind of just more stuffed in, all for me to use it 3 or 4 times in a month, to be totally honest. And those were great times, and it was, nice on my neck, and I was able to get what I needed to get done very easily. It's just until the product gets smaller and lighter, or until it can do Mac-like things with maybe a portable keyboard trackpad and not a Mac. I also in tow, right? Because you're taking a MacBook and the Vision Pro and the accessories and all this. It's a lot of different power cable crap. I had high hopes for it as a travel aid to kind of like have my workstation travel with me. But for specifically for a trip where you're moving around a lot, I would not recommend it. For a trip where you're going to one hotel for a week, sure, because then you can set up your battle station at the whatever the crappy desk at the hotel is. But when you're moving around a lot and you got to pack it up and unpack it and whatnot, that's a no-do. Would not recommend. Let's look ahead. That's enough life stuff for now. Is it? Is that enough life stuff? I've got all these stories from Japan that I want to share. Yeah, I'll pick one. When I say I have a long list of Japan stories, I've probably got 25 items that I just kind of squirreled away during my trip of things I wanted to share with you in this format, because I like telling stories. And I'm going to pick a story out that is primarily about me being a dummy, because I think I've come across, I've shared some pretty sharp opinions that I have, as if I know everything, but I don't know everything. Just enough to be an arrogant jackass. So traditionally in Japanese hotels, I'd mentioned earlier that, like when I was in college, the front desk would just close at a certain time and they'd lock the doors and that would be that. So you were expected at and this may still be true. I don't typically stay at ryokan, or like traditional, like minshuku, meaning like you're staying in rooms that are annexed to a person's actual home. So you're basically, it's like it's like original Airbnb. It's like before, really, honestly, it's a many hundreds of years old B&B like situation. And in that context, if that's where hotel culture started in Japan, you could imagine it's actually not that unreasonable to say like, oh yeah, well, we lock up the gate at 10 o'clock. And just so you know, that's when that gets locked. So be back by then. And breakfast is at 8, right? Or whatever. And we'll serve you breakfast. When I first started traveling in Japan in 2005, my very first hotel I checked in, even though it was in downtown Kyoto, it was like, all right, so, the gate, the doors will lock at 11. And when you leave, please leave your key at the front desk. And we will, my Japanese wasn't very good then, but it was made clear to me, like, you don't leave the building with the key. And so nowadays, with all the international travel and globalization and, a lot of these traditions have fallen away. And when you see them, it's almost mostly a nostalgia play to boomers who miss the good old days of not being able to leave the hotel room or the hotel building with their key. And so Becky and I were in Matsuyama, which is going to be the site of next year's Ruby Kaigi in April. And we were at an onsen hotel. At check-in, they let me know, here's your keys, first of all. And they were like, actual fucking keys that you put into an actual fucking door. They weren't, sensors. And we will, guard these. So I'm trying to do a direct translation. We will hold them at the front desk for you when you go out. And I was like, yep, sure, whatever. And so we went upstairs, and you spend most of your time inside one of these like onsen resort style hotels, like inside the hotel building anyway, because you're kind of just schlepping from the cafe to the baths to the next meal, or to like, I guess, the relaxation area with a beer and a massage chair to like, the next meal, back to the baths and so forth. If you go to a fancy hot springs resort hotel and you spend most of your time not at the hotel, you're wasting your money. Because it's not what it's really designed for. Now, unless it's a hot springs resort town, like I guess like Matsuyama to a certain extent, because you can walk around and visit a lot of different ones, or Kudogawa Onsen in Asa Prefecture, or Kumamoto Prefecture in the Asa Crater, where it's literally designed as like there's these 18 and you kind of just do that walk all day. But that's sort of the same concept, just broken out beyond one building. The point is to genuinely disconnect and relax, not do a whole lot of touristy shit. That said, they don't have a convenience store inside this hotel. And so I was, at 7, 8 p.m., I was like, uh-oh, I'm starting to have some Chuhai food scarcity. I need to make sure that our fridge has enough alcoholic canned cocktails that cost $1, and enough, little like peanuts covered in salty white chocolate or whatever the snack of the month is. I went down to the front, and I remembered at check-in, like, and they looked at me like, I remembered they said, we'll guard your key when you leave. And my language ability is good enough now that I went up to the guy. I was like, I know this is a dumb question because I'm a dumb foreigner, but when you said that earlier, like, is it optional? Like, am I allowed to leave the hotel with my key? Must I check it in with you? And he was clear. He's like, no, of course you can take the key out with you. It's your body, your choice. He did warn me though. He was like, but if you leave the hotel with the key and something happens to the key, it will be a tremendously great expense. Like, and he used language to indicate like it would be a very significant expense. And it's true in the past. I don't know if they haven't figured out how to rekey locks. But whenever I've lost a key or heard of somebody losing a key, it's been an order of magnitude more of an ordeal over there. So I was like, don't worry. It's been a long time since I lost a key. I think I'll be fine. Now, important note is I was wearing a yukata, robe-like drapery. I had Gaeta slippers instead of tennis shoes, and it was raining. Also, it was a very steep decline from the hotel to the convenience store. And so like, what could go wrong? I was just thinking like, no, I'm a smart man. I can handle this. And so I walked outside, walked down. I realized like I had a little tiny bit of a slip. I was like, oh wow, like these Gaeta slippers, or sandals, I guess. These are not a lot of friction. The coefficient of friction on these sandals is disappointing relative to the task of walking downhill on slippery rocks while it is sprinkling. And I did the thing sometimes when I'm trying to get friction while I'm walking. A good strategy can be to kind of like laterally sidestep a bit, right? So like twist your body 30 degrees to the right and then sort of do, instead of just straight forward gait, kind of like do a little bit of a shuffle step. I'm shuffle stepping now in case you can hear my energy. So I was working my way down this hill. I just wanted that convenience store junk food so bad. And hit a rock the wrong way, wrong angle. And instead of just slipping and falling like I would have if I was walking in a straight line, it was, I guess it's a high risk, high reward thing. I fell real hard, like my left leg just threw out far to the left and my right leg wasn't slipping, so it didn't fall. So I kind of did like, probably looked like a really bad hockey goalie, trying to like, make a save. I believe I was wearing underwear under the yukata, which in that moment became critical. So I fell, and then a secondary fall from like that forward, just onto the pavement, catching myself. The little pocket, not a super secure pocket, out flies my phone, which I immediately reach for, as well as this very fancy, brass key. So the key flies out and right into the gutter, just right in there. And gutters in Japan tend to be wide open affairs. They're not like I'm not talking about like through a grate, right? That I'd have to fish out with a hanger. Like more like in medieval times, right, where you had like the raw sewage poured into the street, and so gutters were just a place for like some of that sewage to slip off into, that kind of gutter. And so if you have to reach your hand into a gutter in Japan, I'm not saying you're putting your hand into sewage, but it's they tend to be cleaned every 6 months or so. A lot of like kind of botanical surprises available and await, like mosses and things down there. In some like fauna too, I guess. I've seen crabs in gutters and things, and it was dark and it was raining, and the key was in that gutter somewhere, and I was like, all right, well, I can either take this as a lesson. Realize, boy, that's hubris, right? Pride before the fall. Didn't realize. I didn't mean for that to be so on the nose. Maybe I can use this as an opportunity for me to actually, for once in my life, learn a lesson and humble myself and say, you know what? I played it a little fast and loose, and I lost. I'm going to go back. I'm hat in hand. I'm going to apologize. I'm going to say, you were right and I was wrong, Mr. Front Desk guy. I lost the key, and I am ready to pay whatever severe penalty is appropriate. I'm going to give him a lot of, a very formal apology. That would be probably the appropriate thing to do. And then I thought about that, and I was like, boy, that sounds shitty. So instead, I just spent what was probably too long of a time fishing around in the gutter for the key. And I got it. And then a little bit too long of a time rinsing the key off later on before returning it. It was disgusting. I got all dirty in the process. Like my yukata got dirty. I'd scraped my leg and that hurt and stuff. And so I just figured it out. So I got the key. And I, got my snacks, of course. I wasn't going to like quit halfway. I wasn't going to, I guess that's more hubris, right? I'm going to keep on going. I don't like to fail. So I got all my snacks, then carried them back up, proceeded to not fall on the way back, which was also a little dicey. And when I came back, the same manager guy, he was right by the elevators. And I was really hoping I didn't look like a guy who had just fallen and gotten all muddy and shit. And this is sort of like a level of service and attention to detail that you typically do not see. He was inspecting the carpeting in front of the elevator. Not a brand new hotel. There are signs of age all over the place in this hotel. Water damage, things like that. Things that would be difficult just to clean up. Not to say it's ugly, not to say it's bad, but like, it's very, very nice. Everything that can be cleaned is immaculate. But, it feels like the 80s in a lot of ways. But not to let that stop him. He is inspecting the carpeting in front of the elevator, and wherever he can see a stray strand of fiber, he's getting on his hands and knees and he's looking at it closely, and he's got a pair of scissors and he's trimming the carpet so that everything is kind of perfectly level, and brushing it appropriately too, so he's not literally giving the carpet a haircut. So I'm going to be thinking about that for a while. All right, anyway, it's enough story time. Let's move on. Let's see. I have as a follow-up item, I'm going to call this a follow-up item because this is the 10th fucking time it's happened. When I sit down to record one of these, what is this? This long form one-way conversations. When I sit down to record, I always like to listen to the intro music myself to kind of hype myself up and like do the lead in. So, because I like the intro music, and I guess it also serves as the program's outro music. It puts me in a certain mood and headspace. So I kind of nod my head along, like to listen to it before I just dive right in. And if you're it's a WAV file in macOS Finder, and if you double click a WAV file in macOS Finder, if your system is configured like a default, you know what that will do. It will open the music application. It will copy the WAV file into your local music library, and then it will start playing. That is probably not what you want it to do if you're a technical person. What I want it to do is open QuickTime, and then QuickTime just play it, and then be able to close it like a file. Now, if you ask Apple, hey, how should I go about making that happen? They will say, okay, right click or control click on the file, select open with as opposed to open, and then select the program, the application, to open it with. In my case, QuickTimePlayer.app. All right, so far so good. Now, if you want it to always do that, there is a checkbox that says always open this type of file, with this program. And that checkbox has been there since at least macOS 10.3, macOS 10 10.3 in 2004 when I first started using the Mac. Every time I have to do this, I always check it. I always check it every single time. And I click always this way. I've indicated many times over the years, this is how I like to open WAV files. I've indicated it over the course of probably 15 different Macs. Some from backup, some fresh restores, and click OK. And it will open that one time in QuickTime. But then, you look at it again and it's still music as the default app. And if you were to double click it again, it would not open with QuickTime despite that checkbox setting. It would open in music and it would copy to the library and so forth. And I have never figured this out. It's something where every few years I'll get fed up just enough to go in Google or spend 20 minutes on it. And never once have I actually gotten something to always open with. Once in a while I'll get an individual file to respect that setting. But I've never gotten all files of a given type to respect that setting. So, all of that to say that macOS still has so many rough edges in it. Here we are. Right in. If your experience the same or different from me in this particular regard, I would love to hear it. If I'm the only one with this problem and this is a violence being committed upon me specifically, like a fuck you in particular, I would love to know. So that's podcast@searls.co. But if you also have this problem, at least we have some commiseration. Because you get so tired. And I think it's a good thing to think about as we go into a WWDC, where we pin a lot of our hopes and dreams of, oh man, I hope this bug gets fixed. I hope this thing that really grinds my gears gets resolved somehow. Only to be disappointed year after year when nothing ever changes. I have no earthly hope. I know that this particular problem will not get fixed until the macOS Finder is deleted and it's replaced by the Files app that everyone hates from the iPad. That may happen at some point, right? And when it does, this won't be a problem anymore because open with just won't be an option at all. There. You can close that ticket. Other follow-up, I might have mentioned this, that I'm speaking at Rails World. In fact, I've got last week's World transcript up. Disney World, Blogger World, Western World, just World. Okay, looks like I didn't mention it. Remember, version 12 live from Japan, I recorded 3 times before I finally had a recording that I could publish, and I told different stories each time, and so I'm very confused as to what I said and what I didn't say. So apparently I didn't share. I'm speaking at Rails World. Rails World is a conference in September in Toronto. It is about Ruby on Rails. It is to become the preeminent Ruby on Rails conference as it travels around. And I'm going to be talking about the app that I'm building for Becky called Better with Becky, and the first kind of subscription module for it, which is called Build with Becky, and it's a strength training program. And so it's kind of a three things in one. It's like a live service where each call it a month, but really each 5 week period, a new strength training program. She's going to release it. And then over that 5 weeks, it will educate you about how to do all of the movements, the mindset for that particular one, like the different kind of like major patterns of movement that are represented and what you hope to accomplish. So like, a video overview kind of explaining the whole thing, as well as, 3 major kind of workouts to be repeated in a progressive overload, usually to put on muscle mass or whatever. So that's, a big part of it. Another big part is the user experience. As you're consuming that, it needs to both be able to, learn that overview, have educational, like kind of like info buttons to go and dive in. Oh, RPE. What does RPE stand for? Oh, it's, perceived physical exertion or whatever. Be able to like help the users learn all of the lingo, and not only the lingo, but like, the right mindset and how to like, figure it out, as well as like form and all these things with form videos. To understand the movements or understand the equipment that's necessary, and then like, links to recommended equipment and all that. So it's kind of like a holistic perspective on what for a lot of apps, like something like Fitbot, is much more just do this, then do this, then do this with this much weight. And then finally, that part, right? Like the actual player experience. Okay, I'm in a workout now. I need to do this step now. The next step is this. The next step is this. Oh, maybe on this particular movement, I don't have this equipment, so I need to choose an alternate. Right? Like an alternate, like instead of a barbell bicep curl, like I can't do that. So I need to pick a different option. So presenting the different options for each, movement in a workout. So we've done a lot of that work. And I'm going to talk about that app at Rails World. And because I'm keeping it a very vanilla Rails 7 application with all the hotwire stuff and active storage and including a lot of the newer tools that 37 Signals is making, like Solid Q. I want to talk about like what it's like as a solo developer to build on a fresh foundation of just vanilla omakase Rails. And it's called The Empowered Programmer. It's going to be kind of a sequel to my 2019 talk, The Selfish Programmer, which was a meditation on lessons learned, less about Rails 5 per se, but lessons learned conceptually about, the difference between developing on a team versus developing as an individual, and the benefits of solo play and hobbyist development. So there's going to be some of that probably in there too. But I think more so, and this might be a sign of the times from just like, people's AI scares, as well as layoffs in the tech industry, as well as a lot of tech leaders starting to question, not just Elon at Twitter, but a lot of tech leaders for years now have been questioning, do I need 1,000 programmers to keep this website that is mostly already built running? And my answer would be probably not. And I realize that's not like the pro-labor question, but in fact, my answers, I remember a certain CTO asking me this, and my reply was, well, if you still need 1,000 people to keep a piece of software, which is, the thing about software is it runs automatically. If you need 1,000 people to keep it running, and it's mostly done, like, you fucked up. How it works is fucked. Like, maybe it's operationally unsound and it just needs that many people to bucket water. Maybe it's a moving target of dependencies and it just takes that many people to keep it from falling over because of the things it integrates with. Whatever the case, at a design level, at a systematic level, like, something is fucked. And so there's an interest, I think, in rediscovering what can you do with fewer people. But more importantly to me, and this is what I've always thought is really critical, is the inverse of like, what are the deleterious effects of just adding people? Like, so, like, oh man, like I don't think we're going to get this done fast enough, so we need to add people. And I think a lot of the focus in software generally is, what can we do to get done faster? And very, very seldom does a business person ever ask or wonder or ever feel informed in a kind of even-handed way by their technical advisors. What are the potential negative consequences of over-indexing on speed of delivery versus alternatively, you know, like one way to get out the door faster isn't to add people to try to go faster. It would be to focus the product and do less, or to challenge yourself to find tools or frameworks that would accelerate development with the same number of people that you have, which is sort of the modern Rails Renaissance argument of like, this is the one person framework, is a phrase that DHH has put out there, I think in 2021, which I think is a good branding for how I experience Rails a lot of the time personally. I realize this is subtextually, this is a threatening conversation for anyone who works at a company with a shit ton of Rails developers. Fear not, because of all those systemic reasons, a lot of those big companies really couldn't afford to cut a lot of jobs because the app literally does require that many people to keep working. But that's not job security, right? Real job security comes from being able to deliver a shit ton of value, a disproportionate amount of value relative to how much you charge, you know, whether that's in the form of a bill rate or salary and benefits. And if you want to deliver a shitload of value relative to how much you like, and by value, I mean profits for whoever you're building the thing for, right? If I charge you $100,000 to build a thing and it makes you $500,000, that is a probably pretty good deal, right? If I'm expecting at my next job 400 grand in salary and other compensation and benefits, and then I mostly just move buttons around one pixel at a time every time product opens a Jira ticket, is it likely that I've delivered a commensurate amount of value to the firm? Probably not, right? So I think most of us have a decent sense of that scale. And whenever I hear people communicate discomfort with messages around how many programmers should it take to change a light bulb kinds of conversations, I think that's the underlying ennui, is they know that either for themselves personally or that generally in a lot of cases that they care about, the cost benefit analysis of the programmers in their organization is kind of fucked or upside down. And that's, grinning and bearing it is not a solution. Or making a pro-labor argument that, hey, like these robber barons who are billionaires should just have to like be forced to employ some number of people as like a social good because our governments don't believe in universal basic income. Like that's a pretty contorted way to view things. And I would say a tenuous one, because there's no law or reason or justification other than, I guess you could try shaming businesses into providing services that governments will fail to. There's just so much you can do, and it's not safe, secure, reliable, sustainable, yada, yada. So that rug could get pulled out from you. So that argument doesn't make any sense. The only thing that I found that makes sense is improve the value that I can deliver. And so anyway, that's the thrust where I'm coming from when I talk about like building apps by myself. And that's why I find the direction of Rails to be very copacetic with my mindset, at least on the technical level. On the human level, and this is as once the talk starts developing this summer, I'm curious whether I'm going to go in this direction. But on a human level, like, what is consulting? Like, what is sales? But to work with the person who needs the software and help them see. And help, and in part, you can only help them see once you've really sought to understand what they really need. You listen to what they ask for. You listen to what they say they want. You listen to like them give a comparison to 15 other apps that they like, that they think that, oh, I want it like this, but this. I want it like this, except this way. And to be silent and to listen and to absorb in a non-judgmental sense, and then to synthesize back suggestions or ideas or trial balloons and experiments to identify like here's what you asked for here. Is this maybe what you really need? And then develop a high trust enough relationship where you can actually get to the answer. And there's in lieu of trust, there are activities like, lean startup where you can kind of just, do a lot of really experimental, lightweight software development. And that is fine. That is good. But I have found that it tends to result in a lot of prototype wear, where as soon as some of that spaghetti sticks to a wall, rather than throw away that prototype code and then build it for real, typically just more mud gets slathered onto the prototype code. And then we'll make this actually working software the next guy's problem. Once it's falling over, maybe we'll be successful enough that we'll be able to afford a real team to go and fix this. But the problem is, if you added 50 features or 1,000, permutations of configurations that the system can go through, and the business is growing and its needs keep evolving, that rewrite tends to not be possible until you're so big and so successful that you can literally afford a red team to just run for years to build an application of sufficient parity. And so the lean startup thing, I think, to me, and the just get a prototype out the door inside of a week, requires a tremendous amount of discipline to force the customer to throw that away. And I've seen over and over and over again people who do that style of build something in a weekend and then as soon as something sticks, run with it development. They fail to actually start over and do it right the next time. And I think a big part of it is the people who are really good at rapid prototyping tend to not be really good at building super duper rock solid fucking foundations that are designed to last for years and designed to be, for example, low overhead from a dependency perspective. Like, this app doesn't depend on a lot of stuff. It depends on a handful of things very strategically that it knows it can trust will not change or break for a very long time, so that I'm not upgrading a whole bunch of stuff constantly and each of those upgrades potentially causing me to have to change the code. It's a different temperament. And so that's, similar to how me as a developer, I often have to put on a consultant hat or a salesperson hat, or, I have a Justin is spiking out some random ass messy code hat. And I've got a Justin is building the, spending a whole 2 days on just ironing out the most minimal set of dependencies I can in order to accomplish what we need at the scale, at the volumetric scale, or whatever it is that we believe we'll need. And over whatever time horizon we believe we care about. For whatever number of full-time maintainers we believe this app will have or should have, if it's as successful as it needs to be considered a success that we choose to keep running. Those are all different modes of operation that are very, very difficult for a single person to pull off if you're not incredibly conscientious about those different modalities that software needs to be viewed through. So anyway, may get some of that in the presentation. I'm excited but nervous to be giving a talk, to be honest, because the app isn't done yet, and I know that the talk is going to take away from app development, and I'm doing this to promote Becky's business and this app, and so if it's still months away, I feel like the conference talk is going to be a wasted marketing opportunity. I want to be able to say, hey, go here, sign up. And I want to be able to feel confident about that, and not like I'm just now signing up for a fucking forest fire of bug reports. So I'll share the link to, that in my, abstract in the show notes. The other follow-up item before we're going to move along here. I mentioned last time around I was working on a little short reel vertical video 60-second joint about a professional Japanese baseball team game that I went to. I'm really slaughtering this sentence. And so I made that, and it's out. I'll share the link. One, I used Descript to actually kind of do the whole production. I recorded the audio outside of it, but it does the transcript. I did the video slicing and dicing and so forth, and the captions and what stock video I used in Descript or Descript, and I like it still, and it's pretty good. But the thing that I really hate about Shorts on YouTube as a platform is that they have made it so difficult to post a custom thumbnail. I only learned last night after Becky pointed out a couple days ago, to get a custom thumbnail in a YouTube short. First of all, if you upload it via the desktop web experience or any web, you upload it. There's a single upload for real videos and shorts. And it will, if you upload through that thing, it will most of the time identify that a vertical video should be a short, so long as it's under the time limit. This time it did, but I've had other times where it didn't. If you upload it that way, you can't set the thumbnail at all. So, and if you try, it'll erase that one because that thumbnail dingus is only for the real videos. If you upload it from a phone and you're using their editor to build the thing in the editor, then apparently there's a pencil icon where you can choose a screenshot of any frame and make that the keyframe for the shorts thumbnail. But if you go too far in the process of saving and publishing, then that option disappears for you, and you can definitely not change it after the fact. So if you're in the mobile app, it is possible to choose which frame is your thumbnail. I know I've complained about this before. I believe on this very internet radio program that while the Instagram Reel thing lets you pick your cover image, the YouTube Shorts, like I'm saying here, makes it really, really difficult to. And then once the video's up, that thumbnail is locked in. And if you don't set your own thumbnail in this very, very precious way, you get YouTube to pick the thumbnail for you. And it sure seems to me like YouTube is optimizing some machine learning thing to say, give me the thumbnails that produce the highest rate of engagement when somebody is looking at looking at shorts in a list of in a list view, right? When you're scrolling through, because Reels doesn't really have this problem as much. And TikTok definitely doesn't as just a feed. The thumbnails aren't really that important in those contexts because people are just kind of like scrolling through videos. And YouTube has that UI, but I believe that like a vast majority of YouTube, how people get into watching shorts on YouTube is that they're scrolling their normal video channels, and then shorts have been promoted to them. And so in that instance, the thumbnail becomes very important. And I think that's why YouTube makes it hard to update, because they don't want you picking a thumbnail that's not going to perform well, because then they won't make as much ad money. They want to pick the thumbnail so that more people will watch, so that they can get more ad views and engagement. And boy, howdy, does it seem like, this isn't AI is evil. This is AI reflects reality. AI reflects life, which is that men like clicking on pictures of sexy looking lady figurine images. And so do women. Both like clicking images of attractive women more than either likes clicking images of attractive men. I could go in for a long reason as to why I believe that is likely. But just me as a guy who wants to be able to post a short, sometimes those shorts might have images of feminine figures in them. I don't want content that I create that is meant to be non-sexual in nature to, when you look at all of the thumbnails, look like a series of thirst traps. And that's pretty quickly how it starts to feel if you make more than one video that has a woman in it. Because it's not going to just pick the first screenshot of a woman. It's going to find the one with the most suggestive possible looking frame. And I don't know how this isn't a scandal. I don't know how this isn't some sort, like, I realize there's been a pretty anti-woke backlash in the post 2020, 2021 fever dream. of, DEI pushes across the nation, many of which you could tell were going to cause a massive cultural backlash in the corporate world as well as in America writ large. But nevertheless, if you think back to that era, if this stuff had been ballyhooed and complained about and pointed out, and its problematicness raised as an issue, it really doesn't feel like YouTube would have stuck with this strategy. But apparently it went just under the radar just long enough for now, companies mostly don't give a shit about DEI anymore because they can get away with not. Or they've felt the heat of the backlash from whoever that is, whether that's customers or employees or executives who are just over it, or local jurisdictions who are now, using the Civil Rights Act to actually punish companies like, what was it? Is it Georgia? I don't have the link in front of me, but there's stories like this popping up all over where a bunch of litigation is beginning to materialize, where Republican AGs are using the Civil Rights Act to actually seek to invalidate grants for example, like, getting black women into executive roles or black owned businesses and so forth as being racist. So here we are in this kind of era of I would not say we're in the mid 2000s of pretty much everything goes and it's totally okay to be completely regressive in how we conduct ourselves on the internet. I remember it was 2009, 2010 when some people started getting criticizing, hey, like maybe our PowerPoint and keynote presentations at conferences shouldn't have like a lot of pictures of scantily clad women on the slides for no reason other than it got people to look at the slides longer. Which, how far are we really from that being the thing here, except it's been disintermediated by a computer picking the scantily clad lady for you. So here we are. That's the world we live in. So that's my caveat. That's my, hey, I made this. I thought it was a cool little short, but the thumbnail is going to be a lady. And I didn't pick it that way on Instagram, and I didn't know the magical 5-layer incantation I would have had to tap on the mobile application to have picked it on YouTube. But I will be mindful in the future to either avoid using feminine figures at all at any point in any of my videos for fear of this happening again, or otherwise I will tap the right thing so that I can pick a more innocuous and maybe even, dare I say, relevant thumbnail. We regret the error. Okay, so that about does it for follow-up. Let's get to the middle part, the middle ages of this program. And this is a fan favorite. Every program, this is version 13 of the program, has had a pun provided to us by one Aaron Patterson, who is a Ruby celebrity. You may have heard of him. His name is Tenderlove on the internet, and that's because his website is tenderlovemaking.com. Because as mentioned previously about, what we were allowed to do on the internet in the early 2000s, no one had a problem with that. And occasionally people will have a problem with that now. And I don't know, man. That's his brand. And I feel like he's reclaimed or reappropriated it. So if you find tender lovemaking to be dirty, like that's his word now. All right, I'm Invisible Ink. He sends me a pun every yada yada. You know the drill. So here's the pun. And he warns before I cleared the Invisible Ink. Not my best, but I literally woke up. And that's because I forgot to ask for a pun. But I texted him, and now the pun is here. When Apple product engineers ask their developers for estimates, do you think they iPad their deadlines? Oh. Yeah. So, as in, like, do they pad out their estimates to push the deadlines out? When Apple product engineers ask their developers for estimates, do you think they iPad their deadlines? So I guess product managers. If you've ever been a software developer, you have been asked how long is it going to take you to do something? And the correct answer to that question is sometimes, it'll take me 2 days, and sometimes it is go fuck yourself. But usually it depends. And no one likes the answer, it depends. And so then that turns into a longer conversation. And yeah. So do you think they iPad their deadlines? I do. I do think that, actually. All right. So currently, June 8th, version 13, when Apple product engineers ask their developers for estimates, do you think they iPad their deadlines? I'm reading through the list. I think that this is... Let's see. Is it better than I brought this type of feature up with a project manager back in the day, but they told me to just put a pin in it? Out of context, I don't even remember why that's a joke. So it's better than that. So that's, I'm going to drag it up. It is at least the new number 10. My feet really hurt from walking, so I've decided to switch to meters. That's the current number 9 from version 7 back in March. I don't think this is better than that. This is getting easier and easier because all you got to do is slot it between 2. And as long as I'm always right, the list will be authoritative. All right. So the new number 10 pun, when Apple product engineers ask their developers for estimates, do you think they iPad their deadlines? All right. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for your very short notice. Just woke you up and made you produce art for me. I will try to be better at giving you heads up in the future. I don't know why I'm saying that, because you're not listening to this, because you got stuff to do, and I don't. And whoever's listening, you don't got other stuff. You're here. This is a thing that we do. It's not a thing that he does. Am I personally hurt that he's not listening to this? Yes. Right? I feel rejected. I feel like I just did this so that he'd see me. I thought surely if I put his content in every show, he'd listen, and then no. So that's on me. I got to take care of myself. I can't make my happiness predicated on somebody else's attention. It's worked this far, but I probably should stop. All right. And thus concludes the pun portion of the program. All right, let's get into the news. You might recall I went on a several minute long aside about how I like food to come out hot and fast. And then I forgot why I was saying that. And I just said jet lag. Reason. The reason that at the top of the show, I reminded or informed you that I like my food served hot and ready and the instant that it is available for consumption is the reason that I'm recording on a Saturday morning on short notice, because a whole bunch of WWDC stuff hit and I wanted to talk about it. In fact, I really was hoping to get a sort of predictions podcast about what I expect to see at WWDC and what I'm hoping for. I was really hoping to get that out the door before either the event itself or the seemingly increasingly common just absolute dump of all the leaks at the last minute more or less spoil the show for us, and I'm sure piss off Apple leadership because they, marketing at that level, this is very similar to the AAA games industry, is predicated, or at least they've convinced themselves it is all predicated on the artful surprise and the reveal. They all went and saw the Prestige film by Christopher Nolan. They've that whole approach to we're going to have a big blowout keynote presentation, we're going to blow your goddamn little minds, is it only makes sense to a person who thinks that keeping shit secret for a long time and then revealing it in a moment where you're the first possible way anyone outside the company would have heard it was through them. Now, they like it for lots of reasons. I mean, first, it's the wow factor. surprise and delight. But probably, that's a lot for gaming. For gaming, it's also like about competitive advantage. Like you don't want to leak that you're building a tornado simulator game if you're a big publisher, because another big publisher might get that idea, and then you end up with sort of like the movie industry did with disaster movies happening. And so I thought of tornadoes. Every year we'd have the same disaster movies at competing film production companies. The Apple thing, I think, is more about they want to control the narrative. They want, yes, the feature might be a quick summary of your notifications, but they don't want you to think about it like that. Maybe they want you to think about it a different way. Or yes, maybe it's a deal with OpenAI to provide a chat GPT-like capability, but maybe they want you to think about it significantly differently than that. And so for them, I think that the spoilers, there's leaks. And then what I think happened last night is more spoiler. A leak is somebody said something that kind of gives away something that's happening internally. A spoiler is here's this finished product, in this case, like a script or a literal video. And I'm either showing you pictures from it, or I am reading it back to you, or I am having watched that summarizing exactly what's in it. To have a spoiler that sort of gives you an out of context description of what's actually the feature, from like as a user to a user might describe it, robs Apple of the ability to control the narrative. And I imagine they are apoplectic. So no, I wanted to get this out the door quickly, so that I could at least, before we get spoiled further, before the actual event happens, talk a little bit about, and for me, it's less about predicting what Apple will do, but contextualizing how maybe they should integrate this into the user interface before I watch or we watch the videos, and we are anchored by how Apple actually chose to solve these problems. I think a lot about how my vision for where the iPad would go. I still remember it pretty clearly when it was first unveiled, before it became clear it was just a big iPod Touch. I had a lot of creative ideas. And then as soon as I experienced the original iPad in 2010 and realized it was just a blown up iPod Touch, like a dream, you wake up from a dream and then the details of the dream start fading. Your reality just becomes dominated by the fact it's, of what it really is and what it could be, and that potential space shrinks. And so that's probably why I like playing the prediction game, because it forces me to think about like, well, if it was me, how would I solve it? So before we even get into the spoiler leak, I'll say a handful of things. I've long since given up hope that I'll be able to right click and always open with another app in the Mac. That's just not going to happen. A few things on Apple's other platforms that I'm really hoping to see. One is, as a long time 1Password user, I've been using 1Password since 2008, I think, 2009. I remember the name confused the fuck out of me, and I'm sure it still does for a lot of people. Was so happy with that product until they started taking a ton of funding, and then clearly we're moving in a more corporate and Teams direction. And then with the move to Electron and whatnot, like I don't know who to blame. I just know that the user experience of can fill in passwords reliably into web forms went down. And it's true that it's multi-platform. So when I'm on my gaming PC, it is nice that I can have access to my passwords. And that's something I would not be confident that the Apple's iCloud password keychain browser extensions for Windows really would work. I mean, they don't serve up those same browser extensions, as far as I know, to Android or to Linux. So the idea that, UX frustrations and the fact that I'm paying for 1Password aside, its unabashed multi-platformness is very appealing, right? Because frankly, there's two things about the iCloud keychain that really I couldn't imagine whole hog adopting as the platform where I keep the keys to my kingdom. One, and this is something Apple probably can't solve, is that I find that there is some degree of diversification in knowing that somebody stealing my iCloud account or my Apple ID does not necessarily either lock me out of all of my passwords to everything else in the universe or expose all of my passwords to whoever steals my account. And so similar to, your Google account getting stolen, if you're a Gmail user, like, the fact that they could reset password to basically any app on the planet that you depend on. There's already too much trust given to each of these platforms that even if the platform doesn't fuck up, there doesn't need to be a hack or something. Like somebody steals your phone and, maybe you don't have the, not advanced data protection, but the thing where like the 60-minute timer, whatever, they get your pin. However it happens, if somebody hijacks your system and can get into your passwords very easily without, some additional, like your 1Password password, then that doesn't feel super secure. So I guess one way they could fix it is they could have an additional layer of security, like, hey, your iCloud keychain is actually locked by another password. That would actually make me feel way better about the whole thing. Because effectively, that's all 1Password is. I mean, 1Password's installed on all my Apple things. If you steal an Apple device and have control of my Apple ID, the vault is there encrypted at rest on the machine. So the 1Password vault, that is. In theory, the operating system at that level could prevent, multiple attempts in a more rigorous way than maybe the 1Password app does. So like if it did actually expose another password prompt optionally to people who wanted that extra level of security, I'd feel great about that. I would definitely use that. So that's one piece. The other thing that is holding me back is currently the iCloud keychain password feature, which is buried in the settings app currently. The password icons or password entries, login items, they store the current username and the current password, but they do not store password history. So if you change a password, and you've had this experience, like if you use a password manager, it's like you're doing your update password, right? You're doing, all right, so my old password was this, my new password is this. You accept a strong password suggestion from your password manager, and then you click save. And as you click save, the password manager will save the new password as the password for that account. And then, whoopsie, the form submission failed, and it returned a 200, but it has an error, right? So now the extension thinks it succeeded, so it saves over the password, but the website is still committed to your old password. And in 1Password, you can see the full password history, so you can easily just click a drop down and go back and get to the password, as it was 5 minutes ago. Up until now, despite Ricky Mondello, whatever their name is, and the password team doing a lot of work to try to make passwords good, I don't get the sense it's a large team. And I understand that they've got a lot of competing priorities, I'm sure, especially with the rollout of passkeys and other kind of seemingly quixotic goals around auth for the platform. They don't support password history at all. There's no undo. You fuck up your password in one login item in one device, and unless you can figure out how to get to another device before it gets online, which is increasingly impossible unless it's literally turned off, then you just don't know that old password anymore. And depending on the app, let's say, and this happened to me, I was actually at another professional Japanese baseball game with Aaron a year and a month ago, and I was trying to get into the Smart EX app, which is a train, a Shinkansen train ticket app. And to sign up for that app, I needed a domestic phone number. And at the time that I signed up, I had one. Now I don't anymore because you have to be a legal resident to have a domestic phone number that can receive SMS messages. It's like one way that Japan gates all sorts of applications, gates foreigners out of them, is by making SMS, and there's regulatory quasi-legal like safeguards to prevent foreign tourists, people who are not legal residents, from getting a domestic phone number that can receive SMS messages. So when you see an app that requires SMS, it's sort of it's a low-key way to keep out foreigners. And that confers certain benefits, like, that app is not localized into English, for example. They don't have to worry about the category of problems that come with foreign tourists using it. And that can mean different things in different types of services. Like, for example, I signed up for a conference, live concert series, and the tickets also required SMS, and the staff and everything, they were all Japanese speaking, and they they knew it was going to sell out, and of course with the yen being cheap, they wanted a domestic audience. So the easiest way to do it was to work with a ticket vendor that required SMS. So I don't know that the SMS authorization was put in place explicitly to be xenophobic, but I bet a lot of people aren't super bummed by that side effect. So I have an account to the system. I know that it is a system I cannot sign up for again if I get locked out. I can't just do Cyril's plus foobar@gmail and have it look like another email address and create another account. It's password reset it also depends on you answering questions about yourself that in your original publishing of it that are based on what you published then in the initial application, but that you can't retrieve after the fact. And so when it asks me a security question, if I answer in half width, like normal ASCII, into that form, but the original time that I submitted was in full width, still looks like a Roman character, an alphabetical character, but it's actually a multi-byte UTF character. Even if I give the exact right answer to the questions, if I don't format it in the correct Unicode code points, it will fail, and you get one chance. So I did exactly what I'm describing. I was, we're watching the game and trying to log in. It's says, hey, you need to reset your password. So I click reset password. The iCloud keychain saves over, and then the form submission fails. And now I know my password was on the iCloud keychain, but now it is not because it doesn't store password history. And I couldn't find that same password in 1Password. And the password did not get reset. So now I try to log in again, and it's that's the wrong password. You want to try to reset your password by answering these security questions that you have no hope of answering with your one chance to do so. So, and if I'd gone to a train station, they could do it for me, because it's an official app of the JR, Japan Rail. But if I were to do that, they'd be like, okay, where's your Zaidu, your resident card? And I'd be like, well, I don't live in Japan. They'd be like, well, you can't use this app. So this app is so fucking convenient. It's not just buying tickets. It's also being able to load them onto your watch. So it's on my Suica card on Apple Pay on Express Pass. So I can just go the whole country and never need a paper ticket, never go to one of those machines, never have to stand in line. You just bing, 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 go everywhere. So losing this app would have been a massive problem for me. Not to mention the fact that I already had a whole bunch of tickets bought in it and loaded onto the thing that I could no longer see or change or cancel if I ever needed to, or even verify what time things were. So I got out of that situation, and only because I happened to have one archived, trashed copy of that password in 1Password under a different URL because they'd moved URLs. And long story short, had I been relying strictly on just iCloud keychain, I would have lost that 100%, no doubt. The Apple-iness of it, where the sync just works and you can't make a local backup easily other than maybe a CSV dump, that is very concerning. I unless I had password history, unless I had an extra password that was like gave me, arm's length distance from just my Apple ID instantly giving people the keys to the kingdom, I would be uncomfortable probably switching from 1Password to iCloud Keychain. But at the same time, I increasingly hate 1Password. I have a bad time, whether I'm on a computer that has the 1Password 8 Electron app, or whether I'm on a computer with the increasingly breaking 1Password 7 app that isn't Electron, but like is not being maintained anymore. And so like just breaks as the web moves forward. So yeah, that's one of the big things I would love to see this year. So I'm going to be looking at what happens with passwords. Of course, the big rumor is Apple is breaking out the passwords preference pane in Safari and Mac and in the settings app in the other platforms, breaking that out into a standalone app. Now it sounds like they're literally just taking that UI and making it an app. It doesn't sound like they're going the whole distance and rejiggering the whole thing, but they'll make it more discoverable and presumably that'll make it more appealing because now it's not buried for people. Yeah, so passwords, one thing. The other thing, they promised this, I think 2 versions ago, was taking the home key. So if you have a lock, like I've got the Schlage, these names are so terrible. Encode Plus something. It's a Schlage, whatever the fuck, lock, smart lock that has a keypad, a keyhole, so you can use a physical key, as well as a NFC reader, which is sort of all the ways to get in, which is great. I want there to be a keyhole because I want to back up in case the battery dies. I want there to be a key code because maybe you have to give a temporary code to somebody, like a contractor, to get in the house that you can turn on and off via the app. And I want the NFC thing so that when I'm done with a run, I can just tap my watch against it and get in. Apple announced that you could take one of those home keys, the NFC things from the home app, and share them. Just share the key with somebody else, which I want to do with my brother, right? Like my brother lives nearby. He's welcome to come to the house when he wants. He shouldn't have to remember a code and fight with the keypad, which actually it's a very bad keypad on that particular lock. So I was looking forward to this, and I was like, oh, it's a later this year feature. And then it got pushed and then got pushed. And now we've just never heard about it again. I suspect the reason we haven't heard about it again is that if you've ever used a shareable wallet pass on an Apple platform, they seem to exist offline and in a non-revocable state. I've never had a pass be revoked, even when the company clearly wanted to revoke the pass. So maybe it's the case that there is not a timer-based reauthorization for like protocol built into the wallet app. And so there's not a way for them to do some sort of dynamic revocation. And for something as serious as a key to one's home, there's features in the OS for like, they're designed for, women and victims of domestic abuse to like lock down their phone, their account, and like log out of everything else and so forth. You'd want to be able to revoke keys to your domicile immediately and with high confidence that the key won't keep working. So I suspect that's been their hang up, is that designing the wallet app to be able to accommodate that rule set with 1 to N shared home keys floating out there in the world and a bunch of devices that are no longer controlled. God forbid you push it out there and then somebody jailbreaks their phone and disables the wallet app's ability to revoke it if it requires participation from the client device to agree to delete it, right? So like there's different, yeah. I want to see a shareable home key because it would be nice, but it would have to come with, you setting expiration dates and features like being able to revoke it unexpectedly and on demand. The third thing, and I realize each of these is kind of esoteric. The third thing I would really love is the ability to, I would like them to unfuck up and unbreak the photo shuffle variant of the lock screen. So the lock screen overhaul in iPhone and iPad blew the doors off in terms of complexity. What you can do, you can put widgets on the lock screen. You can not just have a a wallpaper image, but you could have it rotate. You could have it be dynamic perspectives. You can do all kinds of things. You can do the filters, right? You can do the font changes. Well, one of those lock screen modes is called photo shuffle, and you can photo shuffle either pictures of nature or cities or people. And if you choose people, which I want to choose because I want my lock screen just be a rotation of depth effect ML generated photos of my wonderful spouse, Rebecca. You click people, and by default, it'll pick some number of people. It'll say 2 people. And when I do it, it's funny. The 2 people that it suggests every time, and this is over multiple phones now in multiple years, is Jeremy, my brother, and Aaron Patterson. And so if I just pick people, it'll be those 2 dummies. And that would be great. I mean, they're lovely man humans, but that's not what I'm looking for. I want my wife to be the person on my lock screen when I log in. And when it launched, I immediately saw this problem. I clicked, okay, select the people, and then it's like there's another UI where you select people. This UI is unlike all the other UIs having to do with people selection. It's clearly you are in because of how the lock screen editor works, you're clearly in a process that is owned by the lock screen, call it an app, lock screen edit.app, whatever it's called under the hood, right? The people chooser will have, call it up to 16 or 18 people available from your photo library's people collection. Now, like Becky and my photo library, our shared photo library in combination is like 180,000 photos and videos. Dozens, if not hundreds of named people in there. So when you have 16 to 18 in one paginable paginated in one non-paginated view, it is maybe a little scrollable, but like if you only have like that short number, first of all, why? It should be searchable. It should be just tapping that like database. 2, I assume because ML stuff has to happen to have like asynchronously to have provided depth effect images of the individuals. 2, if you're going to pick random people to churn the NPU, the neural processor, to create these depth effect nice images, like you should probably choose people that the person either interacts with frequently, has named, maybe has favorited. There's a favorite feature in the people view, but it does none of that. It just shows random people. Most of them are like former students of Becky's school whose name isn't even in the Photos app. And if I remember right, I believe that they don't have to be named, but it's always randos. It's like the reason I picked Jeremy and Aaron are those are the only 2 people that I still talk to that it suggests. Now I have bought several phones since this feature initially rolled out, because I tried it in beta, and then I got like whatever the 14 Pro and now the 15 Pro. I have tried from backup and I have tried from clean restore. Every single time I see the same people, the same 16 to 18 people. And even if it's not from backup, it's like there's something in the cloud now that has, after it initially got registered during beta time, there's something in the cloud that's like, this is the list of people that we generate for the photo shuffle. And so like that, what that means for me is I can't pick Becky, my spouse, of whom I probably have 70,000 photos, as my lock screen photo shuffle person. And so the amount of like hoops I have to jump through just to approximate that, to like create an album of all photos of Becky that I like, that's a smart album on the Mac. But of course, smart albums aren't available on the phone. So that means you have to make the smart album on the Mac, filter it however you want to do, and then copy all of those into a traditional dumb album on the Mac, so that the dumb album, I'm getting frustrated just, yep. And so the dumb album goes up to the cloud and on the phone, and then you can select photo shuffle from an album on the lock screen. And does that work? Yes, it works. However, you do not get the cool depth effect where like the time and the widgets kind of appear to be behind the subject of the photo and so forth, which is kind of the whole fucking point, because that's the transition that occurs when you go from the phone is in lock screen turned off, always on screen to always on to actively on screen, is the person will pop through. So fix that, maybe, would be fucking great. My confidence after two, major OS releases with this not getting fixed, is that this will never get fixed. Because that whole feature is just too big, and it seems like something that they tasked a SWAT team on, that they spun up just to do the lock screen, and then they wound it right back down. So yeah, passwords, shareable home screen, lock screen, photo shuffle. I'm not the first person to talk about the lock screen photo shuffle. I know Jason Snell had the same problem. He made a big stink about it, and then nothing changed. So maybe, but these things have long development cycles associated with them. So maybe, thanks to Jason Snell, if nothing else, somebody will do something. So let's get into the Bloomberg report. This Bloomberg leak by Mark Gurman, who has he made a name for himself at 9to5Mac when he was a teenager because he had good sources at Apple. And as he went to Bloomberg, where I believe it's common knowledge, or at least it's often spoken about, that part of the compensation for reporters at Bloomberg is you make, what do they call it? Market moving news. So if you break market, break news that moves a stock up or down, they've got some level of journalistic integrity. One hopes that they're reporting facts and actually sourced information. But if you can move the stock, your part of your bonus compensation is based on your ability to do that. And the reason is the way Bloomberg primarily makes money, apart from the relatively expensive $200 a year web subscription to their, website, are Bloomberg terminals, which get all of those articles even faster than the website. So the terminal is like a computer. It's a workstation. It's like if you're not familiar, a Bloomberg terminal, it made sense technologically a long time ago, but now it's basically like damn near insider trading machines. It's a special subscription that is only available on I think an invite only basis, and even then it's tens of thousands of dollars a year, because you'll get this report some number of minutes before the market will, and then you can start to execute trades. And I don't know how it's legal, but it seems unfair. Anyway, if the news that the terminal has exclusively in advance moves the market, that makes the terminal product a lot more appealing. So Mark Gurman was an obvious hire for Bloomberg, to bring, because he had all these great sources at Apple and all these leaks. And Apple has been working, Tim Cook talks publicly, he doesn't vent his frustrations very often, talks publicly about how much he hates leaks. There's all sorts of internal memos that of course have leaked about Tim Cook talking about how he hates leaks and the leaking leakers who leak them. Look, before we get into the content, I have always wondered, when we say that they get a bonus for moving the market, I wonder how big it is. Because if I'm Tim Cook and I know, the company doesn't revolve around the stock price, but it's significant enough that they make lots of decisions based on it. For example, one of the expected things in this leak is that they will announce on stage that they are partnering with OpenAI for some amount of their AI nonsense. Now, which they will be branding as Apple Intelligence, and which they will be making clear might happen on device, depending on which device you have and depending on which request you have and the complexity. And maybe that'll go to the cloud to a Mac Studio running an M2 Ultra chip, which I'm speaking to you now with a Mac Studio with an M2 Ultra chip. Or maybe it'll go to a different cloud and it'll run on OpenAI stuff. I don't know. But I think the reason why Apple is naming that OpenAI is going to be providing this service is probably not for the customer's benefit, not for certainly anything strategically. It doesn't solve any strategic problem for Apple in being a successful business. It solves a market investor Wall Street problem, which is the idea that Apple is somehow behind on AI, because they're the only ones not flailing around in public making asses of themselves. And this is coming from somebody who uses all these AI tools all the time. I just don't let it generate my primary work product for me. I think that Tim Cook knows, and the senior leadership at Apple knows, that if they can point to, we're partnering with OpenAI, and now we are OpenAI's most important customer, and we got, them to backfill these things that we can't do. So now we're just up there with Microsoft and everyone else, and you can just get off our backs, right? That's why they would announce OpenAI on stage by name. Because, everything that you have on your iCloud, almost all of that stuff is stored on either Azure or AWS or Google, storage backends, all in the cloud. We don't know that. Nothing in the operating system says those names. Nothing lets you pick, from a settings menu, oh no, I don't want to be on the Google Cloud. I want my stuff to be on the Amazon Cloud. It is an implementation detail. It is something Apple wishes wasn't true. Apple wishes, I'm sure, that they could snap their fingers and have all of this scalable, worldwide, content delivery optimized storage available so that it didn't need to rely on any third party to store your iCloud shit. But it does, and so it works with multiple vendors, and it's a contracting thing. I'm sure they play off each other, and I'm sure they get pretty good pricing. So why would they name OpenAI? Why wouldn't they do the same thing, right? Like if they need some extra big LLM muscle, it would make more sense strategically for Apple to yada yada away who is providing it and have OpenAI be just man behind the curtain. You're using Siri, and it just happens that Siri got a lot smarter and fucks up in exactly the same way that ChatGPT fucks up. That's just a coincidence. Don't look behind the curtain. And then that way, if they wanted to, they could play it off Google Gemini or Claude or any of these other models, and even, get more sophisticated in terms of deciding which model to use for which use case. And change those models out from underneath you without the user being any the wiser. Or, and this is probably the long-term goal, and it's probably still the long-term goal from an architectural perspective, get your models up to snuff so that you can run them on your own hardware, so that you can not have this ongoing licensing dependency or ongoing, service constraint where you depend on another company's servers. That strikes me as being, how Apple would have played it if they didn't have to sell investors on the idea that they're not behind on AI. So I think there's a lot of ego here, generally, and it feels like that we're going to hear. I think we're going to see a lot of tap dancing around this OpenAI thing because they're going to have to name it, but they're going to feel shitty about having named it. And so they're going to probably over index on, as soon as I saw the name Apple Intelligence floated a few months ago, I was like, this is absolutely what they're going to call it, right? Like this is the most Apple-y name possible. So Apple Intelligence will be different. Apple Intelligence is going to dynamically and intelligently route whether your thing happens on the device or in the cloud, and whether it goes to OpenAI or whether or not. And of course, it's all opt-in. And of course, here we're going to certify that, your shit didn't go to the cloud, and our servers don't know anything about you. And we're going to go above and beyond to make it seem like how we're approaching this is more privacy secure, more, conscientious, probably more, they'll probably make a comment about, this is running on our M2 Ultras, or some percentage of these requests are going to be happening locally. And then starting next year, we predict 60% will happen locally. And then if you consider the economic, right, the climate change effect of that, we're going to be the greenest of all of the companies because everyone else is just punting to the cloud. I think we're going to hear them go through the litany of their secondary priorities, or rather than priorities, maybe areas of self-consciousness. And that will be how they run the show. But they're gonna do even more tap dancing, I suspect, because they'll have had to utter the phrase "open AI" from their lips. That's gonna sting, is my guess. So, again, before we get into any of the specific features and stuff, if I'm Tim Apple, I would probably really, really hate Mark Gurman. I would, of course, mostly hate the employees who leaked. But that's playing whack-a-mole, because apparently Mark Gurman has his fingers in a lot of pies throughout the organization, is probably making more friends all the time, and who knows how. Maybe he's sharing some of that bonus money. You know what I'm saying? Talk about ethical breaches that ever since the quote-unquote the big hack story at Bloomberg, where they claimed that all these servers around the world were somehow had chips in them that were reading back to China and foreign state actors everything that was happening on every server, and then like it turned out that like there was absolutely no evidence of that, and then they just never retracted the story. Ever since then, I've been dubious of the journalistic integrity over there. So maybe Mark is his secret sauce is kickbacks. Maybe that's how he gets his leads. But regardless, if I'm Tim, unless this is why I'm curious about how much Mark gets paid in this bonus. Like if I'm Tim, I've got a standing offer to you, Mark. $10 million a year. $10 million a year and some stock. And your title is Senior Vice President of Shutting the Fuck Up. Congratulations. We can't wait to have you on the team. Your office is going to be in Yucca Mountain, where we store the radioactive waste. And you just sit there and you shut the fuck up. And that's your whole job. Just shut the fuck up. Don't talk to anybody about Apple or anything else. And if you could just get on that, that'd be great. And your OKRs are all going to be based on things like, you know, I went this long before opening my mouth or checking my email or making a phone call. And if you really, you know, knock it out of the park and hit all of your KPIs for the first 3 years, you'll get maybe an extra stock grant. Maybe we'll promote you to chief shutting the fuck up officer. CSFO, which I think is a real one. Security financial, whatever the fuck. So, yeah, I can't believe that phone call hasn't happened. And if it hasn't happened, it's because of pride. Because you got one individual, one named individual at one particular journalist outlet. And if you haven't made that offer, you're a fucking dummy. Or you're too goddamn proud. Pay off that dude. Like, you pay him $10 million a year, your stock will thank you in the form of hundreds of millions of dollars, because you will be able to control market reactions without all these leaks. So I don't know, man. Maybe, is that illegal to hire a journalist? To give them journalism's a hard industry, man. They need sustainable jobs. And a lot of them are working for companies now. You know, you go from journalism, you go into the PR group, right? He's just in our PR department. He's heading up a brand new experimental division of our PR department where we experiment with not talking. And so far it's going great. Seems above board to me. I don't know. What do I know? I'm just an internet guy. Okay, here's some of the content. So I'd already shared a little bit about like architecturally how it's likely to work. They're saying that the iPhone 15 Pro is probably the oldest phone, aka the current top of the line phone, that'll be able to do any of this shit locally on device. Or an iPad or a Mac with an M1 chip. That kind of, I think that demonstrates or illustrates how powerful the M1 is. Like in terms of just beefiness and die size compared to one of the A series chips in the phones. Because, you know, there's 4 years gap between what was going on in the M1's architecture and the current iPhone 15 Pros. That the iPhone 15 or 14 Pro can't do this. And then, of course, like I said, dynamically determining whether run locally or on the cloud. And that's probably going to be, and this is the Apple Intelligence, I'm sure they'll point to, it's like factors like location and battery. And like if you're traveling, if your battery's been draining often, like we'll be more likely to punt it up to the cloud, or if it's a long request or so forth. And they'll bend over backwards, talk about why it's okay or safe for your data to be in the cloud this time, even though it's not usually. This is a quote, a major component of the AI push is summarization. Features that quickly recap articles and web pages in Safari and so forth, and meeting notes and emails. I think summarization is often pointed to as one of the safer things you can ask an LLM to do, because it's taking a lot of stuff and then making it smaller. And so the opportunity for it to make up brand new shit doesn't present itself quite as much as asking it an open-ended question. And it is safer, but it's also like something like a large language model that is really good at spewing fluent bullshit is like very well prepared to do. It's just better at that kind of job. So in areas where summarization would be useful, or seeing at a glance what's up, I have for years wondered, like, man, like if you've ever tried setting up focus modes or scheduled summary, or really gone through app by app by app to set granular notification settings, there is still no way to tell your phone, like, hey, just only text, only like let iMessages come through that seem important. Or if I've got a friend who's texting me every, like in rapid fire bursts of 30 messages, maybe don't buzz my phone or my watch 30 times, maybe just batch those up. And that could be done with like a simple debounce algorithm, right? They still haven't done that. But if you could have some sort of hypervisory intelligence, quote unquote, that will, be like an offensive lineman to you, or defensive, a lineman that blocks oncoming parties. I guess defensive lineman, no, offensive lineman in that case. Tortured football analogy. And this is a person who's got your back to help you focus. Right. Thematically, I think that makes sense to me from a notification perspective. So finding summaries, maybe making notifications make some kind of sense. Scrolling through, catch up feature on what did you miss while you were asleep and that kind of thing. Reply suggestions, and you can just kind of imagine. And because we've seen this elsewhere, like things like GitHub Copilot and Gmail's web interface move from spicy autocomplete versions of LLMs, which is currently what the iPhone does with its software keyboard, to more fully fleshed out responses, like, pre-canned emails ready to go. I would think Apple would be more conservative about that, because there's a big conceptual difference between you wrote this email by tab completing a bunch of useful phrases, and I wrote this email for you, and I hope you skim it before you hit send, because otherwise we're just going to be spewing slop back and forth to each other forever. And then we're going to have so much slop in our inboxes that we're going to need the summary tool to summarize the slop for us. And so I think, we're just increasingly, it's sort of like you look at what's happened to the web, right? Why is Google bad right now? Google sucks because when you Google for shit, spam bot farms that were designed to hack Google SEO, like to SEOify Google's PageRank and other algorithms for how they sort content. All those content farms that are very much automated have effectively captured Google search, right? Google's not ready to say that's what happened, but they've given up the ghost. And that's why they have all these AI summary things now, is because like they know that they've been captured, and there's no way that they can just make search better, because the internet that they're searching is garbage. It's almost like if we go further with a combination of summarizing tools and generative communication tools at the like personal level, at the local level, all we've done is take the problem that has broken the web and bring it into our personal lives, right? Like now, instead of me having a worse experience Googling, I'm having a worse experience in terms of my online relationship with my mother, because it's generating the Mother's Day card for me, and then she is thanking me with a generated response, right? Am I complaining? I don't know. Like, would I take advantage of that stuff when I'm being lazy or when a relationship doesn't matter to me? Sure. Problem is, like, most people have more relationships than they have relationships that they care about, but that they have to maintain anyway. So I don't know. It's a little miserable. Xcode's going to get a little baby version of GitHub Copilot. I'm sure it's going to take several years for that to be useful. If the only thing it does is help you search the Xcode code documentations and Swift stuff, like, that'd be great. Because as it is now, there are so few Swift developers out there that are doing anything outside of the very tight-knit Apple ecosystem that it is very difficult to get good code generation for Swift or for Objective-C. Certainly that's up to date with the latest frameworks. And it's also difficult to just get questions answered about Apple's coding. But if Apple's training this thing on all of their internal code and their best practices and their documentation, both internal and external and so forth, and they might be, redacting stuff that they feed into this thing because they don't want their secrets to come out. But like, if they're the ones training it carefully, then a useful feature would be to explain what the fuck to do with this API, right? And how to use it, especially if it's kind of got some sort of informed edge and some front matter at the top of the prompt that invisibly will steer people towards whatever the Apple recommended approach is, or what the new way to do things is, and avoid deprecated things, which is typically what you'll see. So let's see. AI created emoji, as has been commented elsewhere. Emoji are a standard body created thing. When you get a Bitmoji or an Animoji or any sort of made up thing that is claiming to be an emoji, it's not really an emoji because it's not Unicode. It's just a picture that looks like an emoji character. Because that you wouldn't be able to send randomly invented Unicode code points over the internet and have them look the same on somebody else's computer. Everyone's got to have those fonts. So auto AI generated emoji. I resist this just because the word emoji. If you're creating AI generated images that look like emoji, like, that's definitely a very safe subcategory, right, of image generation, as opposed to full-blown Mid-Journey or Stable Diffusion or other prompt-based, like, hey, make me a deviant art-looking image, which is 90% what you get from those things. Voice memos will have transcriptions. Like, how many years now has, like, voice memos gotten automatic transcribing recordings? I feel like it's come multiple times, and maybe I just keep thinking it and then I try it and it's not there yet, but it sure feels like it should be there. AI is coming to the Photos app. And again, you just expect, like, you're going to get stuff that you saw Google doing a couple years ago where you can remove stuff in the background, but probably not to the point where you can change, like, take 4 pictures and then change your kids' heads to look like the one from their best picture. A lot of these are kind of just dull to me. You can place icons anywhere you want on the screen, not necessarily fitting a grid neatly. Okay. Honestly, like, when I see that on Android phones, it just looks junky. But at the same time, the home screen has become less and less vital as increasingly everyone relies on search and just looking at what they previously ran as sort of the launcher for apps. So for me, my home screen now is dominated by widgets, and I'm even using a tool called Dumbify, I think, that just creates a widget of, like, just text links to the top 10 things you do. I posted that to the blog. A screenshot of what my home screen looks like now. I don't know if I'll keep it. Control center, updated interface. It claims the music widget's better, and I would love for that. I think the music widget kind of sucks. The fact that the music widget on the lock screen doesn't let you control volume or see what the current volume is seems bizarre, but does have a massive fucking icon for your AirPods or AirPlay target. Seems odd. It is good to know where the music is going, don't get me wrong, but it seems like there's room for a bar that has volume. And I think that the problem has been having a bar that shows playback status and also a bar that would show volume would be confusing, especially in a dimmed screen. I get it, whatever, figure it out. Yeah, but making Control Center be paginatable, there I am again, paginated, that strikes me as whenever you can scroll on multiple axes, so I'm scrolling vertically through my system, but I can also scroll left, right, then where your thumb starts that operation is going to depend which axis you're locked into, if you are locked in an axis. in general, it's just something you want to avoid. So I'm curious how they're going to make that happen. Maybe it's scrollable up, down. I guess right now, just once your screen gets full, it's full. Settings app, totally revamped on all major platforms. Well, I guess iOS, iPadOS, macOS. Lest we forget, that's only half the platforms now. Look at us. We got watchOS, we got Apple TV OS, we got Vision OS. If you've used Vision OS or seen a screenshot of the settings app in Vision OS, they actually take all of the apps settings and they put them in a thing called app settings. So the settings app, instead of being an infinite scroll in the sidebar, is actually pretty neat, and it makes sense. Neat as in tidy. So it makes sense, and then you go to the apps level settings, and they are, from an information architecture perspective, one layer down. I think that makes a ton of sense. I suspect we will see exactly that. So expect a settings app that is disappointingly similar to the current one, and still you'll mostly just want to use the search to find your thing, but it'll look a little tidier, and each individual app settings will be layer nested. Change to the effects feature in messages where you can send, like invisible ink and stuff to individual words. I'd be really interested to know if we're going to get like bold and underline, which I think may be features of RCS. And so they may just need to implement that for compatibility, at least like being able to read such messages. But at that point, that means like now the message box, which has been a just beautiful little bubble where you just type things into and hit send, I guess you'd have like a rich text. What Apple hasn't done is they haven't put the toolbar for rich text. Instead, you have to highlight, and then you have the little, cut, copy, paste, but with the right arrow, and then there's right arrow, look up, translate, speak, right arrow, indent, outdent, BI, it's talk about UIs they could fix. There's a lot of screen. You don't need to cram everything into just right above that word. You could make that a two-dimensional user interface. That I don't know. I shouldn't give them such good ideas without them paying for me. I could be chief figure the fuck out officer. Passwords app. We discussed passwords app. Calculator app revamped. I have never needed the calculator app. I've needed it, but I have not needed it for many years. So it'll be on the iPad and the Mac. Cool. Funny thing is, whatever reason, like a lot of checkouts, a lot of registers in Japan, people still use calculators to show the customer what they owe to pay. Like especially at like a bar or restaurant, they'll read your tab and they'll like actually figure out and 10 key calculators. Like I've seen so many people, even young people, just like fly with them and then tally up your total. So it made me nostalgic for hardware calculators, but I'm not going to give a fuck. I'm not going to get out of bed for this iPad one. I don't think. Calendar can bring in data from the Reminders app. Right now the Reminders app exists because getting Siri to figure out how to put stuff into my things inbox is a pain in the ass. So instead I just use it as a reminders dumping ground. Say, hey Dingus, remind me to do X. That'll go in the Reminders app, and then things inbox can just slurp that in and then delete it from reminders. That is all that the Reminders app exists for me. And it's unlikely to get to the point from a keyboard shortcut perspective to ever be as efficient. I am in things right now, full disclosure. I'm using things. I'm biased. Health app. It's going to do stuff. Nothing. I'm reading it. Nothing I care about. It would be cool if the health app made sense. It feels like a dashboard to a world I don't care about. And maybe that's just my lack of curiosity about my own body or whatever. But it just seems like the data they have is never the data that I want. And the way that they present it is not useful. The watchOS 11 update. Maybe the way to do health would be have more functional apps. Like on the watch, you have the cycle tracking app if you're a person who menstruates. If the health app was broken up into apps that are more focused on, say one on cardiovascular fitness, one on strength training, one on medical shit, like drugs and stuff, like breaking it up so that each individual app would be smaller and more kind of like bespoke As it is now, it's just a complete nightmare of, hey, do you want to see your walking trends and also your likelihood for cancer? Just like next to each other. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I know there's no cancer shit in there, but there could be. Just do a genetic testing in the new Apple Watch. That'd be fun. Safari has some changes, but then it's unlikely to, and then a whole bunch of stuff that's not going to happen. Okay. Apple's devices are getting new wallpaper packs, which are no longer relevant because of the aforementioned lock screen. I don't think a lot of people are using just straight up normal wallpapers anymore. And Vision OS 2 is not going to add anything noteworthy, which is a bummer. When I talk to people about Vision OS and features they might want, I wrote a blog post that some people appreciated about how I use Vision OS every day. I'm still using every day that I'm not traveling, I guess. When I'm here, it's my primary computing monitor. And if I could have 2 4K streams of my Mac in Vision OS, right? I wouldn't give a fuck. Everyone seems to want that. Like, oh, and there's an internal version of Vision OS that has the Mac virtual display and you can do 2 displays. Like, the fundamental problem with 2 displays is that the thing you're looking at dead center in front of you isn't the thing. And so, and the thing off to the side, unless you like have a job where you have to like keep a look at a running log, I guess, or I don't know. It's just too fussy. I just like having one thing in front of me doing one thing at a time. So multiple displays, I do not care. However, and I'm actually going to skip ahead now because I've been skipping this email for too long. Neil from the mailbag, jumping ahead to mailbag time. Neil wrote in to ask, I've heard rumors that Apple has internal Vision OS builds that put up 2 virtual monitors from the Mac. There we are. Do you think Apple will release something like that? It does sound like something Apple will release because it would be easy, assuming that the bandwidth works out. And I will say, actually, one thing to add, I ended up not using my Vision Pro for a large reason why I didn't use it while I was traveling was that if Wi-Fi was turned on and either device, or both, was connected to hotel Wi-Fi, the input latency between the two was insufferably slow because peer-to-peer Wi-Fi was crowded or whatever. I don't know. It's just the same shit. Like Bonjour never works on networks you don't control. If you were to quit, like exit, like if both devices had their Wi-Fi NICs turned on, but they were not currently joined to any Wi-Fi network, then the input latency would be fast again, but you're also offline. So that's not super helpful. So that was a big reason. So anyway, I can only imagine that 2 monitors would just make it more bandwidth constrained. 1 second. I am trying to kill there's been a mosquito-like bug, some kind of bug biting me for the last 40 minutes. It's trapped in this room with me because I'm in a hermetically sealed room. And it's just been biting various parts of my body. And I've been using this as some sort of tantric exercise to not slap the bug. But I just had a golden opportunity. And so I slapped and I missed. So I came at the king and I done missed. And now there's fluids coursing through its thorax that are going to only make it more active. Apparently that's how bugs work, by the way. If you swat at them and you miss, they're going to just reactively buzz about even more. So you've made your problem worse. Neil, back to Neil. I'm going to show my age by wondering if instead Apple would do something like X window management system, or x.org, and have all the windows from your Mac just float in space unconstrained by a desktop. That sounds better to me. Yeah, so X is like the idea is a Windows server, and there is a Windows server on the Mac. It's just kind of constrained into the 2-dimensional space of a screen. And the idea being, like you have a server that is got all of these defined windows at various sizes that kind of exist in memory, independently of one another. and the client is able to like interact with those. And when you do a resize operation, you're actually phoning back to the server, and the server figures out how that affects compositing and so forth. It's just an architectural internal thing. But if Vision Pro was communicating with your Mac via some sort of similar server client architecture, where the Mac would provide the Vision Pro as a client, hey, you can slurp up any number of these windows. So you'd imagine, like, I would imagine my Mac would still be in front of me, but I could squirt out individual windows, like just my VS Code and just music, or just my VS Code and my terminal, and leave the rest in the Mac down there, right? And maybe it's showing me a projected mini Mac, because of course, like when you're looking at a Mac window through Mac screen through pass through, it's not very clear. But I could imagine something like that, or even like a mini launcher where you're interacting with the Mac Virtual Display, and it's showing you, here's your dock of running apps, and you can pick any one of them, and then it would launch in a native looking Vision OS screen that would be independently resizable and placeable in 3D space around you. That would be pretty dope. Again, the dopest of all would be just not cut the Mac out of the equation and run Mac OS in the headset and do the same thing. But I'd settle for this for sure. So yes, Neil, that also sounds better to me. That sounds pretty ambitious to get that right. And it doesn't sound like something that would be coming right away. But maybe they'd show a teaser and say, hey, later this year, this is something we're working on. Because I think they know internally, and I think they're looking at their diagnostics, that effectively the Vision Pro is an Apple TV that is better for screen sharing than the Apple TV is. I mean, because the Apple TV can also do it, but you're not gaining a whole lot from a productivity perspective if you're looking at an 80-inch screen from 12 feet away versus a 30-inch screen from 1 feet away, right? It's the same rectangle. It's just further out. All right. Back to see if there's anything else in the list of Bloomberg shit. We're getting towards the bottom here. Very towards the bottom. Yep. The only other little teaser, the new health features will be fundamental to upgraded Apple Watches in the fall. And the new AirPods enhancements will be core to multiple new models coming later this year. I would love for the Apple Watch 10, with an X, to be an iPhone 10-like overhaul to the design, because I'm very sick of the pill bottle, like pill-shaped style. I'd much rather a flatter, sleeker, maybe even tapered edge. I'm not a watch person, but it just feels too bulky, and it takes too much space, and it rests too high off the wrist. It would be cooler if it was slimmer, or even like somewhat form-fitting, like curved. And also, a big screen, and also better battery life, and also brighter, and all these things, right? Like, I want it to be more magical, it just feels so samey. But that's not for this week. That's for September. All right. Moving right along. Talked about AAA games a little bit over the last, almost every episode. I just do a quick check-in. Valve, makers of the Steam store and famous games like Half-Life, the current owners of Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike players on Steam opened over 400 million cases last year. They're like loot boxes that you can buy and trade and stuff. They can contain extremely rare, cosmetics, and I think it's mostly or entirely cosmetics that you can get. Like, my gun will look cooler, or I will look cooler. Well, if you do the math, that's like $1 billion. So Valve made $1 billion on basically marginally like no effort. So that's incredible and depressing, because that's $1 billion of revenue for something that takes almost no effort. It would be really hard to make a AAA game and a narrative experience that would be really heart-wrenching and moving, and maybe merely 10 hours It would be hard to make one of those and be confident you could turn around and get $100 million or $200 million in revenue from that. Or profit, I should say. Sometimes the revenue is easy if you're a big studio and whatnot. You can get a certain number of sales, but boy, the gaming is currently just so jacked between all the COVID money that kind of came rushing in and then receding as people went back to reality, and the fact that all of the best and easiest money is the worst possible money if you actually care about the platform or the medium. Let's see. Moving along, canceling certain things. I'm not going to share that news piece. You don't need that piece of news. I've decided. You're either not good enough for it or you're too good for it. So you don't have to think about that. Star Cruiser. Oh, this is Neil again. Hi, Neil. Email. This is a mailbag one. Oh, wait, no. You know what? That's a teaser. Pretend that was a later on segment because I've got to go through recommendations. Recommendations. Back on track. The news. I kind of want to have. I've got a Stream Deck in front of me, and I could use it to load sound effects. I should do that because I want to have different sounds when I move from follow up to pun to news to recommendations to mailbag, just so we can all be on the same page. The bug is back, and I'm not going to slap him. I'm a gentleman. I'm not. He's my roommate now. Recommendations. 2 recommendations for you. Things I am consuming. 1, a television series that Apple released called Dark Matter. It stars Jennifer Connelly and a cut rate version of Jeremy Renner, as far as I can tell. Kind of the squinty Jeremy Renner-like guy. Not Jeremy Renner, but just, if you look at the marketing for the show and you squint, there's a man who is squinting who looks kind of like Jeremy Renner. Jennifer Connelly continues to be just, she looks maybe 5 years older than she did in Requiem for a Dream 30 years ago. It's incredible. But she's also just a tremendous actress. I've loved everything that she's in. So whenever she's in something, it gets my attention. We're on the 2nd episode now. It's yet another kind of quantum sci-fi thriller. Like, somebody at Apple is extremely excited about quantum physics and the ramifications of that for storytelling. I think it's actually just a bigger trope that we all got some mere time traveling plot devices became so pedestrian that now we are in whenever the heyday of time travel movies in like the late 80s, mid 80s through early 90s. I think we're in the multiverse trend where we're going to be just tortured through a 6-year period where everyone's trying to test out every possible spin on what if it's a different dimension narrative. And I think we're at the tail end of it. So this is I don't think Dark Matter is that good. Becky and we were watching it and she suggested we watch it. I already had downloaded it for the flight. I didn't watch it on the flight. So I was like, let's give it a try. And then within 15, 30 seconds, I was predicting what would happen next in the pilot. And I kept predicting. And I was like, all my predictions ended up turning right. And Becky's really good at guessing what's going to happen in shows. And I'm typically very bad at it. So because I'm very present, I think I just I suspend my critical thinking and my criticality. Maybe that's why I like TV so much, is I can not be a judgmental asshole for a little bit. So I tend to not watch TV or movies with a critical mind. I just absorb them, and then after the fact, I reflect on their quality. So I will usually just play the game, but this show is the protagonist is so fucking dumb. He's a quantum physicist observing, without spoiling it, phenomenon that could really only be explained by concepts of quantum physics that he literally just that same morning in his community college lecture explained to the audience. And also showed him doing like a kind of a podunk experiment at home, indicating he was still passionate about this, like in his closet or in his garage. And then continuing over the course of 2 episodes to not fucking get it. That like the thing he is experiencing is related to the thing that is his life's work. It's just, he had to be that dense for me to be like, it's this, dummy. Like, it's got to be this. This is what it is. And so I kept making correct predictions. And then that's when Becky and I knew, like, this is probably not a very good show. Because if Justin can tell what's coming, it's not a good sign. All right. Other recommendation, I am going through, just like reverse culture shock, I'm going through Japan withdrawal of wishing that I could just get a $1 canned cocktail out of any fridge, any 100 feet that I walk. It feels like that is my right. I'm also missing, delicious and super well-prepared food that costs less than $10 for multiple courses of meals. I miss scalding hot fried food that just sears all of my skin cells and, burns the palate clear off. I miss that a lot. So I guess a lot of things I miss are dining related, but also just the, what it's like to walk through the city at night and stuff. So I'm playing a game whose title is very tortured. In Japan, the game's title is Ryuga Gotoku, which means like a dragon. And in America, it is called Like a Dragon, Yakuza. In Japan, it's Ryuga Gotoku 7. But in America, it's Like a Dragon, Yakuza, no 7. Because Sega of America, who had named... Is Sega of America still a thing? Or is it just Sega now? I guess Sega's American marketing people. Years and years ago in the PS2 era, decided that Like a Dragon was a silly name and that a better translation would just be called the first one Yakuza. So we've been calling this series Yakuza, and in Japan they've been calling it Like a Dragon. I think somebody at the Japanese Ministry of Tourism was like, maybe calling one of the most popular cultural exports from the country Yakuza is like a bad look. Could you maybe get these names in alignment? Please and thank you. So they're trying to rebrand a game that everyone in America knows and the West knows as Yakuza there's a reason they didn't call it Like a Dragon, all right? It's not that great of a name in English. I don't think it's that great of a name in Japanese. Maybe it'd be better if they renamed the Japanese one. Not going to happen because there are Yakuza who'd get mad. So anyway, I'm playing that game, and it's the first game in the series that takes a turn-based approach to combat. And I like that because I don't like the button mashers. I like to be able to let the computer sit while I, in my case, cause I'm playing in Japanese, I need to stop and translate it pretty often. And incidentally, the only thing I have to share is if you want to exist for 100+ hours in a Japanese-like environment, like the Yakuza franchise is basically the best-in-class AAA open-world games that you can do that in. And they just pump out so many of them. It seems like every year there's a new one, and it takes me most of the year to get through it. In fact, I've only ever beaten Yakuza 0, which takes place in the 80s, and that is where I would start with the franchise. If you've never played a Yakuza game, go play Yakuza 0. It is hilarious. Yeah, one thing I'll say, the Yakuza series, other than just being a really fun depiction of the seedy underbelly of Japanese, consumerism and yes, organized crime and the rough edges of society. The language is really hard for me because people use extremely informal or sometimes violent or diminutive language that is not like you would hear if you're at a store or something. So I like the game, but I find the Japanese very difficult to understand. And so I very often have to pause, and fortunately you can pause in the middle of cutscenes, thank God. And you can still kind of see, even though it's grayed out, like what's on the text. So I had gotten in a habit in Japan of using GPT-4o, which is the latest model, and it is very, very good at Japanese language and presumably non-English languages. Taking a picture and having to say, hey, what the fuck's on this picture? I'm going to do a blog post with more examples of this soon. But I took a picture of a dialogue and it said, oh, here's what it says. Like this, I was like, this is a screenshot of Yakuza. Tell me what's on the screen. And I was going to start that as a chat with a whole bunch of these screenshots of, so that I could just quickly get a sense of like what is being said here. Or take the image and turn that into selectable text so that I can go and save it to a word bank that I can study from. It beefed. I took one picture. Granted, it's a potato cam from an iPad Pro, but it totally got every single word wrong, the meaning wrong. It was clearly just making up bullshit. I was like, are you sure about that? I upload the GIF from I Think You Should Leave. I have it in an album so that I can just quickly upload the you sure about that GIF to ChatGPT because it'll understand the GIF. And then it'll say, oh, yeah, you're right. That's not right. And then it'll try again. And that makes me happy. So it failed multiple times. It didn't get a single word right any of the times. And I was like, damn, like, is it this camera? Is like ChatGPT was killing it when I was overseas taking pictures of menus and stuff. So then the next day I opened GPT-4 or ChatGPT, the Mac app. The Mac app is wonderful because it mostly works. And I could see my most recent chat was that Yakuza one. It said it was using an outdated version of my customization instructions. And then I saw, oh, it was using GPT-4, not 4.0. So then I went and just dragged and dropped the image into a new chat that's using the 4.0 model. And it got it. First of all, the response was instantaneous or damn near. And it got exactly all the text and the context. And like perfect. So if you're an actual language learner, like the difference between GPT-4 and GPT-4.0 is night and fucking day. Now there's still a lot of problems. And I'm working on a separate blog post about do's and don'ts with using LLMs for people who are struggling to get the value out of them. But boy, yeah, I only play games right before bed, and it's really hard for me to translate a lot of Japanese right before bed, but I would refuse to play this game in English because it's such a rich opportunity for me to context switch into Japanese. And so I that's why I don't finish very many of these, because like it takes me forever. Let's see. Let's do. So I teased this one, so I got to do it. Mailbag. Woo. I'm waving my arms. Yeah. Neil asks about the discourse lately around Galactic Star Cruiser, prompted by Jenny Nicholson's 4-hour video about it. And Jenny Nicholson is a YouTube person, and she complains about stuff. As far as I can tell, hey, it's a game recognizing game. I don't watch her stuff, but I only know of her. Actually, how I found out about her was I was going on the Galactic Star Cruiser and everyone was whispering in line, yeah, I think Jenny Nicholson's going to be here. And I was like, who the fuck? I don't care. But we were there on like the third sailing because it's a cruise in space. Spacing? It was like a week after launch, and it was a 2-day thing, right? So we were on the third or fourth cruise. And I think she might have been just 1 or 2 after that in actuality. So thank God our cruising didn't have any influencers on it. So people could just experience it. And people who watched her 4-hour video, it sounds like a lot of like, it's like everyone would bum rush the next attraction or set piece and just stick their cameras up, which, you know, that's not great. In fact, when we wrote it, the app wasn't ready yet. And so they gave us all iPod touches that were in cases. And because it's so difficult to juggle 2 phones, I was just like, you know what, I'll just leave my real phone in my room and I'll just use this special single purpose data pad, right? I guess that's the Star Trek term for it. And that resulted in a way better experience. First of all, because it had a known build that was tested by staff, installed to the device, and I did not experience very many bugs. There were 1 or 2 cases where like the wrong image, an image for a different improv actor was shown for a particular character, but those were usually ironed out within a couple hours. In general, the app worked great, and I'm really grateful for that. I'm also super grateful it didn't have a camera on it, right? Or a camera that would go to your photo library. And so most people were not taking around a bajillion pictures throughout the whole thing or holding it up and taking a lot of video. They were present in the experience. Most people wore the costumes. We bought some shit on Amazon. to fit a theme. Jeremy and I had characters. Our characters were, first of all, we were land speeder salespeople. Jeremy made a website showing the inventory and then a custom font to make it Arabesh, the Star Wars font. And you could see all of these different land speeders we had. And then we also had a Toyota Tercel available. And we made business cards with a QR code that you could scan and go to our landspeeder.business, which was the website. The staff loved it. Other guests thought it was fun. It was like we were the nephews or something of the character from Attack of the Clones that tries to sell Obi-Wan death sticks in a bar, which I guess are Star Wars cigarettes. So, yeah, Neil, he asked, I heard that the experience. Okay, so continuing Neil's email. I'm not going to try to sum that up, but one of the ideas that rang true to me is that it was really let down by software. Does that match your experience? Well, okay, maybe that's why that was the first thing to come to mind. No, the software worked great. The improv actors were fucking phenomenal. And because we put our back into our own backstory, tried to use language, right? Like don't talk about alcohol, talk about whatever their, not synthahol, whatever their version is, talk about credits instead of dollars, like use some of the vernacular. Play the character, LARP, so to speak. I don't go to Renaissance fairs, right? I don't play D&D, but I just tried to be present and try to exist in the world as they were trying to build a world. And the improv actors, there's like 8 or so main characters that are floating around throughout the whole thing, like the captain and the rapscallion. And if you watch Jenny Nicholson's video, maybe you've seen all this. I'm not going to bother because my experience was actually fucking awesome. They will respond to you in kind. So if you're totally checked out and you're just wearing street clothes and you're just like, all right, tell me what to do, that's what you're going to get. But if you're like, yo, man, so I heard about this, went down on this, and you just drop a couple of proper nouns, the improv actors showed the fuck up and they were so damn good. The guy, Jeremy and I immediately took to the Wraith, who is like the smuggler character. And we had always kind of wanted to play both sides anyway. So we went full smuggler. We basically were at the kind of head of he would organize kind of a crew to do a heist. And we were like, you kind of get bottlenecked several times over the course of the experience, so that if you do all the boxes, check all the boxes in the app, and you make friends with the improv actor, like he would invite us during dinner the second night. Hey, let's go meet over in the cargo hold. Like I got a special conversation to have. So we go there and we've got like a little, he gave us a card, right? Like to get in. And there's this room in the cargo hold that we hadn't been in before. And now there'd been several little meetings like that or scrums. And it was a smaller group each time, not a bigger group. And so this is a group now of like 8 or 9 people. And these are the people who all completed all of the smuggler requirements / we're playing ball. He explains the heist operations. Okay. You need to create just diversion here. You're the one who's going to grab the case. You're the one who's going to hand off the case containing this gem. I guess there's no spoilers anymore because it's gone. Containing this gem, and you got to walk across the atrium without getting spotted by stormtroopers. You got to hand it off to this lady who's like one of those blue insect looking people. Her guitarist is going to pick up, and then they're going to be the ones who get it off the ship because they're the entertainment who work in the cantina. Jeremy and I had like 2 of the most vital roles in this heist operation. And so we coordinated with the other people and we all played our part. And the heist occurs while another main storyline in the main atrium is occurring. That's like the Imperial and Resistance, First Order and Resistance storylines. So everyone is who's at the end game, which as far as I know, might have only been 35 out of 160 humans. So it's true that not everyone gets the awesome experience, but like a lot of people didn't fucking put their backs into it. Sorry, you lose. No one loses. You still have a great time. It's still you get out of it what you put into it. So don't be shocked. I don't know. But the 35 of us who were at the end game of our particular branch, it was goddamn magical. It was like nothing I felt like I was in a fucking movie. Everything was beautiful, pristine. The suspension of disbelief was real. It was unbelievable. And I could go an hour, but I shouldn't go an hour. In fact, I got to wrap. pretty shortly here. So yeah, man, Star Cruiser never could have made sense. Whoever had the spreadsheet of its costs, because like they had like 80 front of house attendants and staff and all these people who were roaming around this hotel with barely more guests than that. And then all this back office operations who were like, people were looking at us with cameras and informing the improv actors via radio, being like, hey, Justin and Jeremy over here and from this room, like they've just completed all this. Why don't you go walk over that way? Right. Yeah. And special little moments, like other little moments where like, like one character is like, hey, you got to hand Rey this thing before she goes up. And ultimately she's going to battle Kylo Ren. It ends up in a very like, come on finale. But it was me who had to like, kind of burst through the, 24 children that the Chewbacca character was kind of playing with as they ran circles around him. And I was like, Rey, you need this. They told me to say this and then some code word. And she's like, hey, thanks, dude. I don't know. I don't remember what she said, but like I was the only one who handed her. And then that was the thing that she used on the stage, like that kind of experience is so difficult to do and not feel forced and phony and silly and make you feel like you're kind of a tool for caring. But when you're fully in it and you're immersed and everyone a critical mass of other people are fully in it and immersed, it is a magical experience. So cool. If you've ever been to something like an immersive theater or a murder mystery dinner or something, like take that and then put on fucking steroids and then take a Quaalude and then suck on some LSD and then maybe you'll kind of approximate how fucking awesome this was. So whatever the Jenny Nicholson thing is, like I know it's super critical. I mean, like, again, you look at the spreadsheets, all the input costs of this at $5,000 a night, even if it's sold out every single night, or $5,000 a stay, or 2-night, 1.5 day stay. No way could it have been a profit center. This was a Halo car, top to bottom. There's no way it could have ever made money, even if it sold out every night of the year. Maybe it would have been, but like compared to like some of their resort hotels that just print money. And then on top of it, there's all these add-ons, right? With all the dining and stuff, but like that, a lot of that was included in the fee. I don't know how it could have ever made money. So I knew that like what we were doing was very special and unlikely to be repeated. And honestly, the fact that it flamed out so dramatically, and that the lessons learned, I think, were like Disney should lean even harder, and theme parks in general should lean even harder into cheap, low operating expense, rinse and repeat, kind of perfunctory experiences. And if you want them to be jazzed up, it should be via software like a VR goggle or an AR headset. That's a bummer, because this is the direction that I think makes more meaningful experiences. And there are things you can tweak to make it profitable, I think. But you go into the room, one last thing, you go into the room, however many times a day, 2-3 times a day, you change or whatnot, brush your teeth. And there was like a little like console, like a little droid that would talk to you. And I was convinced that there was a person on the other side of that droid talking to me. Like there was a can thing it would say, but then you could click the microphone button and talk to it. And it would reply to you in fucking fluent English and very relevant to what you're asking about or what you're saying or what you're reporting, because it would ask questions, right? And the questions it would ask would depend on which of the 4 storylines you're going down, and us going down the smuggler one, like it was relevant and pertinent. And that's just like a little cinematic, droid thing that's animated. And I'm convinced that I don't know how the operations. I know somebody who worked on Star Cruiser, and maybe I'll ask him at some point, but like I'm convinced that was a real human, and if it wasn't, that was really good scripting to convince me it was real. So anyway, yeah, if you didn't do Star Cruiser and you were at all interested, I'm very sorry, but you missed out. And if you didn't do Star Cruiser and you thought it was all big and stupid and whatnot, like maybe there's an IP for you that would have worked, but I'm just glad I had the experience. Like you said a million times, whenever this comes up, if there's ever a Hogwarts that's $5,000 for a week, $10,000 for a weekend, my left arm for a weekend, I am there. And if I don't get Gryffindor, I'm going to burn the place down. She didn't say it. Those are my words, but it's true. All right. Let's call for mailbag. I think that's probably enough content for one day. I'm looking forward to WWDC. Again, I'm watching it along with the rest of you 1 p.m. on Monday. The rest of you, 1 p.m. Eastern Monday. Be there. on the YouTubes. I'm not going to do like a live talk over, although that would be funny. I don't know if anyone does those. In gaming, that's a thing people do. Yeah, I'm going to watch that. I'm going to watch the State of the Union. And then the next morning on the 11th, I'm going to record a very special episode of Changelog podcast with Jared and Adam. And I'm going to be their Apple fan guest. And we'll discuss, what showed up, what was actually presented, what are the ramifications, and what we should be looking forward to this fall. And whether you should install the betas. I'm sure that'll be a big part. I will probably be installing some betas for science and research purposes. Okay. I don't know about you, but I'm going to get out of here. See ya.